The money's broken, and how can you raise a cow that should have a really good life before it goes into harvest? How are you supposed to be able to make a profit off of that beef whenever diesel prices go up in an inflationary fiat system? Input costs, fertilizer costs, everything. How do you plan for that? You can't. Okay, so what do you need? You need that store of value to where you can fight that inflationary, deception that, basically the Fed is doing to agriculture, United States of America. We know why beef and Bitcoin work. It's a vertical integration back into a money and food system that most of the world does not understand yet. Lose the poverty mindset. There's abundance of wealth of knowledge out there that everybody can start, but it starts with the individual. Nobody's going to save you, folks. It starts with you putting your foot down and saying, I'm going to quit validating all the deceptions, and I'm going to go steward and engineer a new integration of my life through Bitcoin and clean, pure food. I do it through beef.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure today I bring you Texas Slim, the man behind the Beef Initiative, which is an extremely important organization that's bringing together these two worlds that I've talked about a lot on the podcast, the Bitcoin side and the carnivore slash meat side. And ever since I started talking about both of these things, Texas Slim was the guy I knew I had to bring on because he is always bringing these two together through what he's doing. And I'm extremely excited to have him here today. So Texas Slim, thank you for joining, sir.
Hello, sir, and top of the morning to you wherever you are. I think we know where you are, but anyway, it's a pleasure meeting you. And we've talked a little bit before the show. It's good to put a face to everything. I've met thousands of people throughout the last half decade that we've been doing this collectively, but it's good to come back on podcasts. I've been pretty dark. We had to do a lot of building, and you reached out, a little over a week ago, and it's like, hell yeah, man. I've seen you grown, and it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you.
Excellent, man. It's funny you mentioned that, actually, how you've been in a dark building, because I just talked with Brandon Quittem recently, who I'm not sure if you've read his work, but he really talks about how Bitcoin is very similar to the mycelium network of fungi, how they
Yeah.
go underground and do all their hardest work underground before they sprout up the mushrooms. And we talked about how Bitcoiners are the same way. We go dark for a while and we just really hustle and grind and build. And this is why when you find someone in Bitcoin and they're silent for a while, it's because they're making something awesome. So I'm really excited to get deeper into exactly what you're building with Beef Initiative. But before we go there, I would love to just get an overview of your story, because you have such an awesome story of where you came from, how you grew up, and the experiences you had over the years that ultimately brought you to this place of feeling that you need to be a very large piece in fixing this food system. So could you break that down for us?
You bet. And it's kind of funny because, whenever you start like this, you don't like to talk a lot about who you are or stuff like that. You don't want the ego to get in the way. But man, I can tell a story forever. And I was taught storytelling from where I came from. I come from the top of Texas in the Texas Panhandle. It's Camacheria. It's the Llano Estacado. It's the Caprock. It's basically the cattle industry in so many different ways across this globe that people are about to figure out over the next half decade. And I come from the desert high plains, and millions of buffalo used to roam these places. So I come from agriculture. I come from agriculture and ranching. My grandfather come to these parts in a covered wagon in the late 1800s. And so I'm a sixth generational, sometimes argumentative to a seventh generational Texan. So, but, I grew up, but the thing about it is I grew up in agricultural poverty because of the fiat dollar. Everything that happened after 1971, basically everything that my grandfather was able to steward, was taken away from us in different forms of asset reallocation. And that's what the globe was about to see once again. And so I come from grit, I come from dirt roads, I come from cattle country. And but the thing about it is whenever I was 19, everything was basically going belly up and I didn't have a future. we didn't have a future in ranching or agriculture anymore because of the debt economy that was instilled during the 70s and kind of had its financial and credit basically implementation of the 80s. We had farm aid. So I really truly do come from poverty, agricultural poverty, and a lot of people don't know what that is. And so that's a story I get to tell now because we're going through the same type of financial money shift, but also land shift and also agricultural shift. And we've lost a store of value in our agriculture and ranching in the United States of America. And that's kind of how I found Bitcoin. That's how I dove down deep into food intelligence. But when I was 19, I drove myself to Austin, Texas. I had $125 whenever I got there. I didn't have a place to live. I knew one person in Austin, Texas, and I started basically teaching myself technology. Never went to university or anything, but have a big tech career that spans 25 years as well. So half of me is agriculture and ranching, and half of me is I became a senior research analyst in the telecommunications industry. So I have a fascinating skill set that allowed me from where I come from and then where I lived my early years as an adult in Austin, Texas, because it was a boom town of technology back then. It was an incubator, and I didn't have to go to university, man. I was just fell into with a bunch of cyberpunks, and we got busy, and we helped innovate the internet in a lot of different ways that a lot of people don't understand. So I have a pretty diverse background of everything that I talk about. So, but I'm very proud to be coming from the place I do, and that's the top of Texas.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's a really fascinating upbringing to be sort of in the wave of the 1971 fiasco as it was
Right.
just coming in and no one really knew what was going on yet. I'd assume that as it was happening, you were too young to really put the pieces together, and probably your family was also pretty much everyone. It seems like no one really knew how monumental of a decision that was of what happened in 1971. And before I get too over my skis on that, maybe you could give us an overview on what actually happened in 1971, because that is a very
Sure.
important date to all of us Bitcoiners. Give us an overview of what actually happened in that date and how it changed everything.
You bet. I like to speak of one grandfather, and that was grandfather. He was a very proud man, but like he came to this part of the country in a covered wagon. He survived the Spanish flu, two world wars, the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, gold confiscation. He survived all these things with the grit and everything, the stewardship of land and community, that you could do. 1971, we went off the gold standard. My grandfather never took out a loan for agriculture. He always paid for everything with cash. 1971, we went off the gold standard. Things changed within money, and basically we were fine. He had over 2 sections of the land up here on the Caprock. But what he started seeing, because I have 6 uncles and aunts from that family, he saw that he was not going to be able to maintain the land value, maintain the agricultural value, maintain the community value that got him there after 1971, because the United States government came a knocking on his door, and that was Eric Butts of the Nixon administration. And as we went off the gold standard, we basically created a new debt economy. What that meant in agriculture is that Eric Butts had a phrase. He goes, "Go big or go home." And that's when we went into the monocropping system of agriculture in the United States of America. We went big. We went big with tractors. We went big with debt. We went big with basically new inputs as far for the land, for our animals. We went into the chemical engineering of agriculture, and that's what happened. You had to into debt to basically facilitate the same type of product that you'd been doing for decades, but that's where the game changed. And if you didn't participate with the monocropping system and the debt economy within agriculture, then you were going to get phased out. And my grandfather chose to get phased out so he could retain the store value that he had built over, his almost 100 years. And so you look at our money system and you look at agriculture, or you look at our health, you can see the big pivot that happened in the early 70s. But the number one catalyst of all of the basically destruction of what we're seeing right now started in that time frame from 1971 to 1974. You know, we as a nation, we changed as far as our food systems. But once again, it was a smoke and mirrors type of thing. We didn't see it for another decade to 12 years. Then people started saying, oh shit, what's going on here? And then, of course, you had Willie Nelson. You probably, I don't know if you've ever seen any of that content, but he went around the country, you know, doing farm aid. Well, what was that? Well, it was asset reallocation in the United States of America with farmland, farm equipment, debt, everything. It had all shifted. And that's what we're about to go through again in the United States and, of course, across the globe. But it's going to be on steroids this time. And very few people understand how big it's going to be. And, you know, that's what there's an attack on our food, there's attack on ranching, there's attack on the cow. So that's one of the reasons that I'm able to reflect on the past, but also engineer the beef initiative into a more decentralized and vertically integrated system instead of such a linear system that hit United States and the world as a whole. We never fed the world with our new agricultural shift, but we did start making massive profits off of our agriculture and off of our producers and off our land.
Yeah, and really just as a high level view for people, just essentially when the government gave itself the infinite power of the money printer in 1971, it then had the power to basically decide winners and losers in every single industry. And no industry has been subject to this more than the food industry, as your
Yeah.
work has shown. They've really come in, and they're very tied up with big food and big pharma, who
Hmm.
all have the same incentive to keep people addicted to unsatiating food. And they don't like it when people are eating lots of meat, because then they're very healthy, their brains work very well, and they are not addicted to food. They are free from food. That's not what the big food industry wants or what the government wants. So
Yeah.
they really have this little club that benefits from people being sick and not having good access to food. And it's just getting crazier and crazier. It seems exponentially every single year. We're just seeing more of these examples of
Yeah.
the government really just promoting more fake slop and really boosting up these very questionable at best entities who are making this stuff. And they're constantly demonizing beef, which, as I've done a bunch of episodes on this podcast, is completely unfounded. Everything we've heard about beef being so bad for us, cholesterol bad, we're going to get a heart attack, it's all totally
Yeah.
nonsense. Just, and it was crafted right around that same period where this shift was happening toward just like this government over everything model, where before that it was more decentralized.
Yeah.
And
100%. Yeah.
could you maybe give a little bit more elaboration on like what decentralization really means in a food perspective? Because
Sure.
when we say before that was more decentralized, now it's more centralized, we want to get more decentralized again. What does that mean in terms of the food system?
Well, that's a good question. And I like to, it's fun to be able to speak to, the solutions that once were and what we have now in the beef initiative. And so what happened is you heard me say linear. We went linear with our food system. Well, we came from, and I'll speak from Texas. In Texas, we have 254 counties. Okay, let's talk about decentralization. Let's talk about vertical integration instead of linear integration. And it's not too hard to follow, but Texas has 254 counties. Okay, it's a big state. It's like it's a country within itself. But we used to have 254 micro processing centers that processed livestock, and that livestock stayed closer to home instead of being shipped over the world. Okay. So if you have what happened in agriculture and what happened to small town Texas that I lived through is that once we lost that basically vertical integration of community-based food systems, that's whenever we started going to a more centralized apparatus. That's when we started corporatizing our food systems, and that's whenever we started allowing the multinational systems to come into basically our raw materials that we had in our communities. Okay. So once we had 254 microprocessing centers. What you would do is local producers bring their livestock to these microprocessing centers. You fed your community first, and then your basically raw materials, your cow that had been harvested gets distributed through a region, through the nation, and then the world. Okay. I'm in Randall County in Texas. Okay, one county over from me, Deaf Smith County, is a multinational. It's the belly of the beast of the multinational system. That linear integration that they instilled into us and started in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and of course to where we are now. What it means now is that even the beef that is raised here on this land, here in Randall County or Deaf Smith County or Potter County, it goes to and it gets processed at a multinational, corporation, be it JBS, Cargill, Tyson International. And, what happens now is that cow does not stay in the community. Okay. Now it gets shipped overseas. And we don't even have access. That same community that raised that beef does not have market access to that cow. And now that cow has to go all the way over to Asia, and it might come back as a byproduct and a part of as you say, this thinned out food system. Just a small percentage of that cow comes back to our community, but it has to go around the world first, has to be packaged, it has to be labeled, it has to be cut up, and devalued, and then it comes back to the plate that it used to. Well, first off, I used to get that plate right when it left that microprocessing center. It went straight to our butcher, then it went straight to our plate. And so that's what's changed in our food system over my lifetime. And it's clear as day to me, but a lot of people don't understand that they basically stole everything that was valuable for our community-based food systems, spread it across the globe, and now they're going for the one world food group. And then we get the basically, after it's been touched by multinational systems at least 10 to 20 times, and then it comes back to us in a very, like I said, a very devalued product. And so what the Beef Initiative does is we're we're basically inverting that system to what it once was. And a lot of America doesn't even know that this is how we used to eat. That's why we were so damn healthy, because we had that raw material right when it was harvested. And with our grains, our produce, and our livestock, that's how we've lost our food system in the United States right now. And our food system is now under attack because they're about to make another massive change that they did in the 70s and 80s. And a lot of people don't see it coming. So.
Yeah, and like you always love to say, people used to shake their rancher's hand.
Yeah.
People were all about those in-person connections. They were with their community. The farmer fed the community. Everyone was incentivized to, well, just do well for each other. Like the farmer and the rancher had to make good products for his community because everyone knew each other. It was very local. There was none of this nonsense just kind of coming in from the top trying to impose all these rules that made no sense, and everyone was healthier that way. And now we have
100%.
just a complete mess. And even with this said, how you're talking about how the U.S. is like exporting some. We're also a net importer of meat. Is that right?
Yeah, we're a net importer of beef and of pork. Okay. And I'll just throw some stuff out there because, everybody goes, what? Okay, where do we get most of our pork right now? Where would you think?
Is it Brazil? I know Brazil. That might be
No,
beef.
that's
I don't know
beef.
pork.
But pork, yeah, okay, who owns Tyson?
I don't
Tyson's a
know.
big, okay. Tyson is owned by Smithville. Who owns Smithville? That's owned by the CCP of China. We're a
Oh
net
my goodness.
importer of pork. So where do you think we're getting our pork from? Everybody's
China?
yep. Everybody's worried
Wow.
about mRNA, right? Okay. They've been using mRNA in pork for a long time. So, it doesn't really matter what they're doing in the United States because we're not even eating, basically American pork. And if we are, you don't know it because they won't put country of origin labeling on our food. So, okay, we're a net importer of pork. We're a net importer of beef now. Okay, think about that. Over 80% of our beef in the United States of America is coming from foreign countries. It's coming from Africa, South America, Australia, New Zealand. It doesn't really matter. They don't have to tell us. And so why are we shipping all of our beef overseas and then we're basically net importing all of our beef into the United States? 80% of our beef that we eat in the United States is burger. Okay, where's that burger come from? It's not coming from the United States. We use our fat off our trim out of the processing centers. We import the trim cuts from, and we basically all of the burger in the United States is a combination of so many different countries' beef that nobody even knows. They did a study on hamburger in Texas out of a multinational processing center. And they have different numbers, but around 92 different genetics was found in that 1 pound of ground beef. 92 different cows and 1 pound of ground beef. And nobody has to tell you where that ground beef is coming from. And that's the biggest issue that we have right now because we do not know basically what is it in the Bitcoin space? Don't trust, verify. Well, if you're eating a hamburger and you're a Bitcoiner, unless you got it through the beef initiative, man, you're going against the ethos. And it's time to wake up because this type of facilitation that they've done within our food systems, I tell everybody every time you buy a steak from Kroger or any places like that, you're probably putting an independent rancher and producer out of business in the United States because you're eating foreign beef and the beef that was raised right down the street from you is being shipped over to China and it's shipped to the highest bidder. And that's the fiat system. That's the commoditized and subsidized food system that we've built. And the labeling laws are so corrupt right now in the United States. Grass-fed, organic, anything that they say. Why do they not put a country of origin labeling on your food? It's because they don't want you to know where it's coming from. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're touching on a lot of the pieces that you were really bringing people into with your magnum opus article you called The Harvest of Deception. This is really
Right.
what a lot of people found you through and what I found you through as well. I'd love to get into that, but in order to get there, I'd like to take a quick flashback to your story because I know that
Sure.
some personal experiences you had in your life were what led you to really just deciding that you need to learn about all this and just having a lot more free time from your
Yeah.
from some down periods that you had. So could you give us a little bit of a walkthrough of how that happened and what led you to getting to this place and writing that article?
You bet. And it's good because I'm glad you asked that. A lot of people don't even ask what's the why behind all of this? Well, coming from where I came from, it's pretty rough and tumble. I come with a lot of grit and it's not being braggadocious, man. We had to be tough. And so I've had over like 20 broken bones. I got 14 pieces of metal in me. I've got a broken neck. It messes with me every day of my life. But what happened to me is about in 2020, 1920, I was working metal. I do all kind. I've been blacksmithing and metalsmithing ever since I was a teenager. So I know how to weld. I know how to hammer on hot metal. But I was working in the shop and I got busted up pretty hard and I broke a bunch of ribs. And so I just dealt with the pain. I was like, I broke some more ribs. But what had happened is I had an internal injury that nobody saw or I didn't see coming either. And it damn near killed me over about a 6 week to about 2 month period. I started really getting unhealthy. I started losing a lot of weight. I got down to about 120 pounds. I'm 6'1", 6'2" with boots on. I usually weigh about 178. 180 pounds. I got down to about 120 pounds, and they said, well, we can't find out what's wrong with you. And they gave me about 6 weeks to live. And so I had to go look in the mirror and say, shit, man, this is it. And I had to go and, I even had to tell my son, I said, hey, man, this is what's going on with me. And so I just kind of surrendered over saying, man, you ain't going to make it. And so by, having that clarity, I looked in the mirror and I said, man, okay, well, you're going to have to leave some form of legacy. So I got on the computer and that's when I really started going deeper down into the food intelligence rabbit hole. And that's whenever I really started paying attention to Bitcoin as well. Well, lo and behold, this new input system of trying to live, it saved my life. And I didn't use the medical community. I did in the beginning because they had to drain over 28 liters of fluid off of my system. So I had 28 liters of fluid. They had to insert needle and they had to basically do 3 drainings, 28 liters over a 10-day period. So, my kidneys were shutting down, man. I had a portal vein that had collapsed. I was in ugly, ugly shape. I'll just put it that way. And but I did. I came back, and it was a vertical integration of basically my own new design consumption model, is what I call it. I changed everything I was looking at, hearing, and eating. Your audio, your video, and your food consumption. I'd given up. I'd say, you ain't got nothing to lose. Let's just go for it. Each day, I just started getting more and more healthy. And so I said, man, I've got to talk about this. I've got to write about this. I've got to basically spread the word. And, that went deeper and deeper and deeper into the Bitcoin rabbit hole. The deeper I went into the Bitcoin rabbit hole, I went into decentralization, went in decentralization of our food supply. And it led me back to how my grandfather taught me how to live. And so it all just started coming together. It's like decentralization, vertical integration. What is health? What is food? How were you raised? Yeah, I grew up with a freezer full of beef. My mother used to feed me, like a bird whenever I used to have baby food that was, bone broth. It had bone marrow in it, and I really went back and started reflecting on what was food, what is food. And just, I think this nation has lost the understanding of what food and nutrition really is and where it truly comes from. And so, with all that said, it's a story of survivalship, but it's also a story of giving respect to where you come from. And it's a way that you can look back and say, hey, man, take a pause and let's get back to the basics. Let's get back to ground zero and let's start over. And that's because I had to start over. But when I started over, I found a new form of money. I was able to find a new form of health. And I was able to look back and give respect to, my ancestors and how we got here. And I think if a lot of people would do that right now without, I have this phrase that said, you know, engineer your own suffering before that suffering gets engineered upon you. And if you do that and you take that pause that I talk about, your life gets tremendously better. And it is. I mean, right now a lot of people are suffering a lot of brain fog because we're so malnutritionally, starved right now. We're overfed and we're nutritionally starved right now as a nation, and it's starting to show up. So I kind of had I was thrown into the fire, and so what came out of it was though is my life's work, right? Being a research analyst and basically, growing up in agriculture, it all just came together through my discovery of Bitcoin and decentralization. Because whenever I started technology, I was a networker. That's how I started. So I understand networks. And so I looked at Bitcoin. I said, hell yeah, man, this is fascinating. So, and then I started looking at our food system of like I was talking about all these nodes, 254 counties, 254 processing centers. We're on to something here. And here we are right now, 4 years later, and we've got pretty good brand identity, and we've got over 200, I think about 250 ranchers and producers that have now come through the gates of the beef initiative with that vertical integration of decentralization. And I think on the first podcast I ever did with old Marty, I said, hey man, this is a great American health initiative that's being led by the Great American Rancher. Y'all hang on. So here we go.
Yeah, I love it, and I love that core Austin community of Marty
Yep.
Bent and all them over there, just really being a good core of the community, just bringing in people like yourself and the Beef Initiative to really spread that signal out
Yeah.
because
They've been
so many
very
people out
fantastic.
there are
Yes.
looking for a lighthouse of hope and
Yeah.
just solutions because I mean there's so many people out there that have now just have that internal feeling of like we need to go back, to the way that things used to be when people were happier and healthier. But a lot of people are sort of flailing like in hopelessness. They feel like there's no hope out there because it's so lost and things are so crazy right now. But these solutions are being made. You just have to make the right connections and network, like you said. That's really what matters. And this is why people like myself and you, who aren't super technical Bitcoiners, are able to find where we play a piece in this puzzle. and we can
Yes.
help people heal that brain fog and lift folks out of that zombified state that they're currently stuck in from the malnourishment, like you said, which is, I don't even want to know what percentage of the world is just in a deeply suppressed mental state right now because they aren't getting enough meat.
I
It's kind
think
of
it
terrifying.
really, well, it's terrifying, and I can do a lot of reflection because over the last 2.5 years, you and I were talking about when you saw me speak in Austin last. I haven't been in Austin a long time because I had to go further out, and so I've driven 160,000 miles across the United States. Shaking ranchers' hand, doing the reconnaissance, building out the beef initiative. But I've also been, just like a lot of Bitcoiners traveling the world and looking at this macro perspective. And I went all over Australia, and I'm going to be able to talk about that soon. I went all over Asia. I'll be able to talk about that soon. It was all because of the Bitcoin basically community that we're able to do that. But what I'm seeing is a lot of this ill health is happening in the Western Hemisphere. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is that the North has now become the South is becoming the North within our food systems and our money systems. And, a lot of people say, what are you talking about? It's like, well, there's a lot of new ranches that have been built across the world. And a lot of basically the ranches that were here, well, the distribution has changed. And so let's look at the health of a nation. Well, we're the unhealthiest nation in the world right now. Our metabolical basically health of a nation is destroyed. 88% of us are metabolically compromised in the United States, and we've got all of the data behind that. And you're talking about the brain fog, and that's something that people need to wake up to. We are living in a brain fog, but what I see, it's mostly in the Western Hemisphere because of the centralization, over centralization and consolidation of our food systems, because we're not getting the same food that they're telling us that we're receiving right now. And it's only happening really in the Western Hemisphere because a lot of our byproduct and a lot of our nutritional density is going over to other nations. There's nations across this world that can't feed their people, but they've integrated themselves into our food systems, into our soil, into our agriculture, and now they're feeding their people with what we should be feeding our children and our families with. This is where Americans are not understanding because of that brain fog, because they're relying on labeling and centralized media and centralized food systems. But we had a conference there in Kerrville, Texas, the first one we had, and that was back in early 2022. And we had Dr. Maria, Mary, gosh, I'm trying to remember. I haven't talked to Mary in a long time, but we had a doctor, Mary. I just call her Dr. Mary, but she is a general practitioner, and she basically she really looks and takes care of adolescents. But whenever parents come to her, she says, "Hey, I'm not going to treat your child unless you, as a family, go on a 48-hour bone broth fast." And that's how she gets rid of that brain fog that you speak of. And so, that's
That's
what this
smart.
nation,
I
it
like that.
is. Yeah. Then she's changed so many people's lives. I mean, the parents get healthy, the children get healthy. She calls it like putting the oxygen mask on yourself first before you start taking care of your children. Right now, we need a lot of adults to put on that oxygen mask. That oxygen mask is something like a 48-hour bone broth fast, and basically quit looking at the centralized, propaganda when it comes to food. The decentralized mindset comes, and then you actually get to vertically integrate yourself into a new decentralized food system, a new decentralized life, and a lifestyle that everybody's really yearning for, like you're talking about. The entry point's not that hard. It really is just taking a
Yeah.
pause. Yeah.
That bone broth fast is a fascinating concept because I talk to so many people, and like I told you, I'm traveling around right now. I'm staying in hostels a lot. I'm meeting a lot of people who eat a lot of different things, and there are so many vegans and plant-based people in the traveler community. So I try to ask these people the right questions to open them up to the possibility that they aren't at their most optimal mental state. And
Right.
one of the things that I will ask is, have you ever done a fast before? Have you ever tried a 3-day fast? And I've been surprised at how many people I've heard, like read something online about that or something, and they heard it was good and they did it and they felt amazing. And then I tell them, okay, if you stop eating plants and go carnivore, you're going to be in ketosis, which will have you in that amazing state all of the time.
Right.
So a
Yep.
lot of people have had a peek at what it can be like to be operating at a maximal level, being run by animal protein and fat, but
Yeah.
they just don't know that that's what they need to do if they want to be there all the time, and they'll have all this so much more energy and ability to think through these problems and just be like a more active human being.
Man, and that's a good point. And I have to tell everybody, this is not a judgment when we talk about food and health. We all got here together. Okay. So it's not a judgment. Well, you talk about vegans and, vegetarians and carnivores. And, I come from cattle country. I talk about beef. I've been eating beef my whole life. Okay. But I'm not telling anybody not to be a vegan, but I'm telling you right now that you're probably a vegan for all the wrong reasons, idealistic bullshit that's being fed with propaganda. Why are you a vegan? Is it about animal welfare? Is it about what is it about? Can you tell me your why and your what and your how behind being a vegan? A lot of times it's been basically propagandized into their head. Not saying, I'm not trying to say, hey, I'm smarter than you or anything like that. But what I've seen is a greenwashing and basically a lack of true understanding of what it means to be a vegan. And, if you're a vegan in the United States right now, you better have a very good source, market access to pure produce. Because if you're relying on the grocery store, they have a study out right now. It's like it requires you now to eat 5 apples that you used to only have to eat one. And that's how they basically have nefariously propagandized our food systems. The apples are bigger, but the density of that nutrition is not there anymore. So it's risky business if you're not really understanding why you are consuming your input system. But I think a lot of people are vegans for the wrong reasons, to tell you the truth, because they look at all the propaganda around agriculture and, how the multinational system treats the animals. Of course, factory farming, feed yards, everything, that massive scale. Well, that's the multinational system. That has nothing to do with how I was raised. That has nothing to do with anybody that's in the beef initiative, because we're the best stewards of the land, the animals, and health that I've ever seen in my lifetime. So, it's tough to talk about because, everybody gets very divisive around, why people are vegans or why they're carnivores, but you cannot argue with history. The reason we got here is we found fire and we found beef, we found flesh. And our brains got bigger and our stomachs got smaller. And you cannot hide from those facts. And the more that you get closer to the cow, the more that you understand that communities that have always honored the cow have always been the healthiest communities in the world. And that goes back thousands upon thousands of years. And so, why are you consuming what you're consuming? Why do you desire what you desire? Is it through marketing, or is it through, like you said, man, going through ketosis and saying, holy shit, I just found the holy grail of energy, of mental clarity, and of basically body, chemistry. So, if you're too afraid to go down that rabbit hole, I don't know, man, you're going to have to answer it sometime.
Yeah, everyone has their own path.
They really
So
do.
I do appreciate your more open-mindedness to the vegans out there, being talking to everyone nicely. I'm not quite that nice, so it's good to have people on here that are a little more friendly.
Right. I get it though. I get it, man. Because people are freaking they're I'm gonna tell you something. Rough Shot found this out first. Do you know who used to own beef.com up until just
Wasn't it
recently?
PETA?
It
PETA
was
had it, right?
PETA. Yeah.
Crazy.
So there's some crazy ass people out there that are carrying that vegan flag. So don't think my kindness is a weakness. That's for damn sure. So you don't step up on you ever stepped up on a Texas Longhorn? You better watch out. So
So taking what you sort of touched on earlier, how there's a lot of misconceptions that the more plant advocates hold against beef and use it to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt about beef. If I'm a vegan and we're in an elevator together and I say, okay, like I understand that beef might be healthy and good for us, but I just don't want to because it's bad for the environment, it's bad for the animals. I hear that cows fart a lot, and that it's bad for the atmosphere, and they use lots of water. What would be your elevator pitch for what they have wrong? And it doesn't have to be a short one. I'd
Right.
gladly accept a
Yeah,
long rant here because I'm sure it's quite complex. But
it is.
what are the
It is.
misconceptions there?
Well, the misconceptions for one is that cows are, destroying the planet and destroying our atmosphere. Okay. And they don't fart, they burp. They've got multiple stomachs, 4 to 5 stomachs. There's always arguments, but the cows are truly land tools. Okay. Okay. What they do is they're the best thing for our environment, and we can prove that through the history of time. They are the land tools. What they do is they're able to regrow soil through their grazing practices, and basically they filter out most of everything that we need filtered out as far as vitamins and minerals for us. They basically, that's why they are should be so protected, but that's why they're going after them so much, is because they are such the solution. It is so simple, it's complicated. And most people that are saying that cows use too much water, no, they don't. If you've got, I don't know, freaking 500,000 cows in one area, and that's the multinational system. A lot of people do not know why they're against the cow, and it's usually because of the factory farming and because of how we went big with agriculture. It has nothing to do with where we came from, especially in Texas and as a nation. We've always been the leaders in stewarding the land and our animals and our water resources to the best, basically, facilitation and stewardship that you could ever have. We lead the world in growing and raising the best beef in the world. This is what people forget. What the vegans and that type of mentality, what they're truly against, is a multinational system that is a corporate system that is basically leaning into economic fascism. They're against a system that is basically propagandizing their understanding of what the animal truly is, what the cow truly is. The cow is the best, basically, I would say, resource to better our planet. They're they sequester carbon just by grazing, by keeping, regenerative practices. You look at, you talk to a vegan where I come from, the Llano Estacado, the Caprock. We had millions and millions of bisons grazing these grasslands for thousands of years. And if you want to talk about, saving the planet, we need to 10x the amount of cattle population across this planet, but we don't need to be feeding them multinational genetically modified chemicals and grains that require a lot of our water resources and a lot of our natural resources. Let's get back to the drawing table. If you're going to throw that type of shit in my face, I'll throw some bullshit in your face that's a hell of a lot cleaner and comes from a lot more truth. As far as what you're trying to say, this is the reason we have to get rid of the cow or get rid of agriculture in America, as we see it. We need to get rid of the multinational system that has stolen that type of understanding and education to the general public. That's what's going on here, is that we need to basically get back to where we came from, knowing that the cow is probably the best land tool and the best option for us moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that explanation. And I would just add to sort of summarize from the research I've done, and I'll try to find some good links in the show notes for people to dig further into this
Sure.
if they want to. But as opposed to animal agriculture, cows, ruminants, plant agriculture uses far more water, it kills far more wildlife, and it destroys far more soil. All of those
Yep.
things are significantly worse in plant agriculture, where they have to just clear cut huge amounts of land. They can't let anything touch that, so they just eviscerate all of the animals on there, all the birds, all the foxes, the rodents, the bugs, and
Can I
it
can I
doesn't work naturally. Yeah, go for it.
Can I comment on that? And
Sure.
that's a very good point. And this is This is something that if you're going to throw animal welfare into my face or into anybody that basically wants to, vertically integrate a decentralized food system based on animal proteins, I know how to harvest. I've been in combines my whole life. You want to see Bambi go up in a combine? I've seen it. You want to see a billion little creatures get killed every year? You keep on being a vegan, shopping in this centralized way. And, there's so much that is hidden from the public's eye. And one thing that we're doing is you want to talk about causing, instinct, basically, extinction of species. I mean, you look at all of the, you look at deer populations, pheasant populations, dove, bird populations, rabbits, everything that is part of the ecosystem. Man, we have destroyed it in a very short period of time. And the best way to basically get back to to that wildlife that we've destroyed is letting the land tools go out there and graze those pasture lands that once were, instead of this monocropped agricultural, system that we basically have, we're trying to spread across the world right now. And let's go back to, why does everybody think, the cow? Well, it's Bill Gates, and it's in the Harvest of Deception. You can kind of see he's now one of the biggest farm landowners in the United States. One thing that people don't talk about, he also owns all the water rights. And so, you look at the water consumption to monocrop, it's unlimited. I sit on top of the biggest aquifer in the United States called the Ogallala Aquifer. We should be able to use that aquifer forever. And in 50 short years, it's already basically going dry. And the reason it's going dry is because the commodity pumping for commodity grains to grow these commodity monocrop systems. So I had to throw that in there. So thank you for pointing that out, the amount of wildlife that we've destroyed in the United States through this monocrop system.
Yeah, and the media messaging that we consistently get is just the exact opposite of what's actually happening, which
Yeah.
is, what
Yes.
you go to exposing in that article. And maybe we could quickly jump back to that. Is I
Sure.
like to really bring up, my guests like big magnum opus pieces and send them over there. So I'll make sure to include the link to Harvest of
Okay.
Deception in the show notes. But could you give us just a summary of this piece? I know you wrote it about 3 years ago now. Have you had some time to really simmer on it and think, maybe rethink some ideas? But if you could just give us an overview of that article and what is really exposed for people to see.
Well, what I did, I was research analyst. And whenever I left big tech as far as it being in the telecommunications system. I was an independent contractor. It was funny. I got released so I could become a research analyst in a decentralized way for the telecommunications because of the type of work I was doing. But I got sick of it because I saw what they were doing with data capture and where we were going to go with track and tracing and everything and user behavior and human behavior really. And we're coming to that point. But I started really looking at the content and the Harvest of Deception back in 2019. But what happened in 2017 was what I was really looking at. Bayer basically consolidated Monsanto. And so we had this huge consolidation of the multinational system of chemical and grain companies right there. But we also have a consolidation of major food corporations across the world. And I was like, holy shit, this is not good because this is going to change the game. And nobody could understand why Monsanto or Bayer, consolidated Monsanto. Well, it's because they were going after a one world food group, and it was going through this new basically food system that they're now unfolding across the world. And so I had to write about it. And so I did the deep dive and I spent about a year doing all the research that I could. And that's what kind of led into the Harvest of Deception. But there towards the end, in like 2020, in 2021, I embedded myself into a harvest company. And I went and did harvest from Texas all the way to the Canadian border and all the way back to Texas. I had to get boots on the ground to see what was really going on. And what's going on is basically nobody really understands where all of our raw materials are going and who owns those raw materials. Who owns the land that we're farming now? Usually you have, lands that has been in, families for 100 years or 150 years, well, they used to plant the seed, they used to harvest the seed, they used to sell what came out of that seed. A lot in that I found out, you might own the land, but you don't even plant your own seed anymore. You pay somebody to plant that seed. Then somebody comes and, does the basically, sprays the herbicides and the pesticides. Then somebody else comes and harvests. So what you have is a harvest of deception that's going on, and a lot of people don't understand that. But I had to get back to the source of the seed from which where we came from. That's what the harvest of deception is. And who owns and who controls everything that we consume as a nation. And from water rights to basically Cargill, which is, they've owned the seed for a long time. And you got to get back to, how did we get here? And the harvest of deception is really kind of a shot across the bow of an entry point of understanding. Hey folks, it's not what it looks like on the surface. We're living an interface surface level life here now when it comes to our communities, when it comes to our land ownership, when it comes to stewarding that land, and who's now owning that land, and what are they going to do with that land? They're not going to give us access to that land anymore, and they're not going to give us access to that nutrition that we used to steward from that soil. And that's what the harvest of deception is really about. And it's about money. It's about land ownership. It's about asset reallocation. It's about understanding how you can operate in a system that's basically being, integrated out of our lives to where we don't have access to, what we once did. And you got to take that deep dive down that rabbit hole. And I think for a lot of people, thousands of people, harvest of deception is what they use as that entry point, saying, "Holy shit, I didn't realize this. This is an eye opener for me." But that was just the first chapter of many chapters that we've basically written since 2019. But that was years of research. That was years of boots on the ground to get to where I sat. I got off a harvest that year and I said, I got to write about this. And so that's really whenever I catapulted into the Bitcoin space, because I knew that I needed to start into a community that was intentional about their health, intentional about their money, intentional about transparency and authenticity, and about, a store of value and, peer-to-peer communications. And so, it's a fascinating ride. And a lot of people have, used the harvest of deception as that entry point.
You've mentioned a well-known gentleman a couple of times by the name of Bill Gates. I think
Yes.
that this might be one of the most misunderstood human beings on earth right now, who has so much power over everything we're talking about right now. And I would love to hear your take on who this man actually is and what is he actually doing, because there's so much like noise out there. Like, he obviously has a lot of money. People know he created Microsoft. He has, Netflix documentaries about, how great he is, all these amazing things he's doing all over the world. What's your take on Bill Gates? I want to hear what's going on with this guy.
Well, for one, I've always it in the early days, it's a love-hate relationship, right? I came up in technology, and and nobody understands the history of Apple and Microsoft, what we did within operating systems and technology itself and software, enterprise software. I mean, that just goes way back. And Bill Gates was a leading innovator into that. I always felt that he is a genius. He is very smart. I'm not going to take that away from the man, but he's also a puppet. He's a puppet for a lot of different, basically, higher resources that use him to integrate into our lives something that is a big deception. A lot of people don't realize that Bill Gates has killed a lot of people through his vaccinations even before COVID started. He's got, he's wanted in several countries right now for nefarious practices. Look at what he did in Peru. Look what he's done in India. And once again, centralized Western media really
What did he
doesn't.
do in Peru and India? I don't know.
Well, they had a lot of experimentations with vaccines and inoculations and in impoverished countries from Africa to third world country, what we say third world countries. And there's been a lot of basically fallback from that. There's a lot of people that do not realize that, he's tested his chemical engineering in different countries to where we don't really pay attention to too much. But if you go down the decentralized rabbit hole of Bill Gates, he's not a good man, and he's very nefarious. And he has an agenda. And I don't talk about eugenics that much. I'm not a conspiracy guy, man. I have nothing to do with conspiracies. But, they didn't start using conspiracy theory in the general public's mindset until about 2020. So, call me conspiracy theorist or whatever. Bill Gates is not a nice man. He's used the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in ways that people have no clue. He basically said that he gave all of his money away. He got 10 times more rich whenever he started the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation than he ever had whenever he did Microsoft. And that's been done through the type of engineering into this multinational system of chemical engineering, pharmaceutical engineering. And why in the hell is Bill Gates owning up farmland in the United States? Well, it's for nefarious reasons.
That's
And
exactly what I was going to ask next, like where the
yeah,
farming comes into this. Like, why the heck is this guy who's been,
yeah.
going around the world, like using like poor children as his test subjects on different, vaccine experiments? What is he doing with farmland?
Well, what he's doing with farmland is he's trying to reinvent food. I think last time I looked, I just got tired of looking at him, to tell you the truth. But the last time I looked, he's heavily invested in 13 corporations of fake meat, all the way from 3D printed meat to stem cell meat to cricket dust to whatever it is. He's got an agenda to reinvent food because of his mad scientist approach to life. And he wants nothing to do with biology. He thinks life should be lived through science. And what's very sad about Bill Gates is that he has nothing to do with true science. It's his own science that he's trying to basically create and engineer and implant across this planet. I don't want to judge him too much as a human being, but I want nothing to do with anything that he says. I know that he basically changed our lives through technology. But right now, man, I'm going to get back to Linux. I'm separating myself, everything that is Microsoft, everything that is centralization in technology as well. It's just not technology that he's destroyed, and I believe he has, because we're getting into quadruple verification when it comes to using any type of platform that Microsoft, stewards now. And the same approach that he did within technology, operating systems, server-based systems, enterprise software, that's what he's trying to do with our land and our animals and our food systems. And, that's the medical, pharmaceutical, agricultural complex impact is what I call it. Well, he's leading the way with every one of those in the medical field, in the pharmaceutical, and agriculture. He's got agendas that he's not being very truthful about. And you look at nanoparticle technology, you look at land ownership, you look at ESG, you look at everything that a lot of Bitcoiners know about. He's leading the charge in that. And so he's a mad scientist that I want nothing to do with.
Yeah, and there's really this battle emerging of, I mean, I'm simply just going to say the good and the bad at this point. The
Yep.
research that I've done just tells me it's really that simple, of the people who want to use technology to empower the farmers and ranchers and the consumers to all understand what they're getting, which is exactly what Beef Initiative is doing, using Bitcoin as like the solution for solving this problem, giving these different stakeholders more sovereignty, allowing them to do this. And then there's the bad side, who is trying to use technology as well, but they're trying to use it nefariously to stomp down these efforts by people to achieve health sovereignty, build those local communities, and they're just trying to force in all this seed oil slop, fake versions of real food, because
Yeah.
they make more money on that. And like we talked about earlier, the big food companies can make more money. They get higher margins because it's factory-fied. Doesn't take raising the cow. They want to get that out of the equation because that actually takes proof of work. And you got the pharmaceutical companies making more money when people are sicker. You got the government, they have a weaker population, it's easier to control. they're it's a huge, massive entity that we're up against here, and we just got this little orange coin, and we just talking about it's going to save everything. And people think we're crazy, but man, all I can say is
Yep.
just keep researching. It really does, it has a lot of power there. Um,
Well,
Go
what I
for it.
love about that, no, and I brought it up like very early, and I tell everybody this. I say, hey, Bitcoin exposes the truth. It's as simple as that. And once you see Bitcoin for what it truly is and what it's going to be and what it can be, you go, aha, you have that aha moment. And so, that's what they're afraid of because let's go back to it. The last 50 years, they've been making massive profits, fiat profits on this, by our basically us surrendering over, to that fiat mentality or that fiat system, that centralized, debt economy. But if you really look at, what Bill Gates is doing and what everybody's doing, and they've been making so many profits, massive profits through our consumption model, right? Within food, they can't lose those profits. They report to Wall Street. So what do they got to do? They keep on debasing our food, just like you said, with seed oils. And I like to turn everybody into a research analyst. You know, what is Procter and Gamble? Who created Crisco? What is there's so much that you can go down as far as a rabbit hole. What happened when Procter and Gamble couldn't sell so many candles at the turn of the century? Well, they had to use that cottonseed and they created Crisco. Well, after Crisco, well, what happened whenever we quit using tallow? Because they wanted to devalue our food system more. Well, they used canola oil, which is rapeseed, which was basically used as an industrial lubricant in the beginning, but now we consume it more than any other fake commodity they've ever created. It's not that hard, but if you allow yourself to become your own research analyst, holy shit, you don't give up, man, because you just keep on going deeper and deeper. And everything that you just said about our food systems, about the commodity based systems, about our land, our animals, about our pharmaceuticals, Bill Gates is part of that, process. And what people don't understand is that, like I said, he's just a puppet to a basically a broken money system. That's really what it comes down. He's basically a puppet for a pharmaceutical system that now they are part of the integration of health in the United States. They can't stop. And they have to create this. Basically, they create the product that creates a sickness, that creates a solution through pharmaceuticals. And if they don't stop this integration, this will of death, of good and evil, that I really believe that we're up against a battle of good and evil right now, then what we have to do as people, as individuals, as sovereign individuals, as we like to say in Bitcoin, quit giving them your attention, quit validating the deceptions, quit giving them your consumer demand, and we cut them off at the knees. And it's as simple as that. But it takes the individual first that builds out to a community that expands into an adoption of a new lifestyle, a new money system, new food system, new communication systems. So yeah, that's the fun journey that we're all on here as far as Bitcoiners and people that are going in this decentralized food system.
And as you've been building the beef initiative, you have seen so much of both of these sides, the dark side and the hopeful side. And
Yes,
that's something I'd love to dive into next, actually, is just some stories, some of your
sure,
favorite stories from. We'll start with the bad, and then we'll move on to the good after to end on a good note. The
right.
bad being these there's so many government crackdowns we keep seeing pop up on Twitter and Noster about how these farmers and ranchers are just having their businesses just crushed by some governments or regulators or just some bureaucracy coming
Hmm.
in and just chopping them off and removing them from the ability to feed their local community with healthy food. So do you think, and if you have multiple, that's fine too, but are there any stories of these ranchers having to go to these battles that really resonate with you that we could share with the audience?
There's too many to tell. I'll give you some numbers. I'll just give you something, and I know that you're going to have Brianna on soon,
Yep,
and
yep.
she's our senior research analyst and writer for I Am Texas Sun Foundation and the Beef Initiative. but we have the most accurate data points that anybody needs to listen to in the United States of America when it comes to agriculture. Last year alone in the United States of America, we lost 27,000 farms and ranches. Okay, 27,000 farmers and ranchers are now out of business and they're never coming back. Okay, now we have the EPA regulating us out of our microprocessing, basically, industry, and they're proposing new EPA regulations that would shut down over 800 microprocessing centers in the United States that feed local communities. Okay, that's on the books right now as far as, legislation that will pass within the next 18 months, if not sooner. So what we're having regulatory capture, basically. We're having regulations that are being, you know, put to the public as far as saving the planet, saving, that's safe for us. But really, what they are is they are an integration system that shuts out and eliminates independent ranchers and producers across the United States. What we have right now is we have the lowest inventory of cattle that we've ever had in the United States. Okay, those ranchers now cannot have financial means to regrow their herds. They're starting to find out that the financial tools that they once used are not there and they're never coming back. So all this happens under the radar, and the general public does not see this. It does not impact them. Within the hog and
Or at least
poultry
they
and
don't know that it is impacting them.
yeah,
My,
exactly. Because they see this bright, shiny objects at the supermarket, right? They see the marketing, the cartoon world of our food system. And one thing that's happening in pork is right now we're a net importer of pork as well. Well, Tyson just shut down that I know. I met 59 families that are now out of business that were independent pork producers, but they had to follow the Tyson protocol, input protocols. Well, Tyson said, hey, we don't need you anymore. Overnight, they're out of business. The general public doesn't see this. Okay, we used to have a nation that had, a very fair amount of people that were part of agriculture. Less than 1% of our population in the United States now feeds the other 99%. Okay, put that. Whenever that's closer to zero, then we're not feeding ourselves as a nation anymore. We're basically a bunch of serfs that are rent seeking into our food supply and saying, more porridge, please. And that's
please,
what's
Daddy,
coming.
give me
Yeah,
some
exactly.
grains.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Eat some more peasant food, right? And so a lot of people don't realize that oatmeal is a peasant food, And so there's so many things that they're doing right now within regulatory capture, within our labeling laws, within the multinational system as far as processing centers. 85% of our animal protein in the United States of America is done by four multinational corporations that are not headquartered in the United States. That should scare the living crap out of everybody, because what that is now coming down to is down to national security. And we know this. And Brianna's going to bring up a lot of these facts that will basically shake you in your boots, because let's talk about digital capture. Okay, we've never digitized our cow ever in the United States. Well, now they've passed the law RFID. Okay, those are digital tracking devices that will be a track and tracing system of our cattle inventory in the United States. Right now, they do aerial surveillance and inventory from the air. They use helicopters. They use a lot of different means that have been very effective for decades upon decades. Well, they're just giving up. They're not even going to do that anymore, and they're going into this digital tracking and tracing. And if you do not go along with that digital tracking and tracing, you're not going to be an independent rancher or producer in the United States, and you will be put out of business. So there's regulatory capture, there's new technology coming that the basically ranchers and producers do not understand. Their EPA is doing new, captures through EPA regulations of, water, but which have nothing to do with microprocessing centers in general. So they're going after the industry as a whole. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. And once they basically able to put these independent ranchers and producers out of business, once they've eliminated the financial tools that once were, then we are basically now a country that doesn't have access to its own food anymore.
Yeah, and the word that keeps coming back to my mind, which you chose in your article, is the best way to illustrate all the things that are happening here is deception.
Yes,
Is like things like the EPA, for example, like it's Environmental Protection Agency. That sounds so nice. They're protecting the environment, they're doing good, but really these are just, all fronts by the government that they give fluffy names to sound like they're doing good
yes,
things for people, but they're really just using them to exert power over others,
yes.
essentially, right?
Well, this is the one that the regulation that I'm talking about. It's about wastewater. Okay. Right now, if you have a microprocessing center, you already have wastewater built in, everything. It has nothing to do with what they're proposing, but what they're saying downstream, you might affect somebody because you have a microprocessing center here. Well, downstream, this is a possibility that you might have some type of bacteria that goes, 5 counties over, and we have scientific proof that this is a possibility. But once again, we've already, been able to prove that the solutions are already there. We're already talking to legislation right now saying this is nefarious. So, people like Massey, of Missouri out there, he's waking a lot of people up saying, this is how they're capturing our food supply. It is through those type of regulations that have nothing to do with what they say. Like you said, environmental protection. Nah, it has nothing to do with that. It's about lobbying. It's about multinational money going into, these regulatory agencies that we've created, during the fiat system ever since we started basically going into monocropping after we got off the gold standard. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really great general overview of the issue. I would love to just try to find one story that we can give people here. I think, was it like Farmer Amos was his name
yeah.
recently, who had just
Hmm.
like completely cracked. That's like just a recent one that I just saw on Twitter. Did
Amos
you follow
Miller,
that
yes.
story?
Yeah, Amos Miller and everything. What
Hmm.
he is, they're a decentralized, vertically integrated, community-based food system. Okay. And what he likes to do is not use chemicals, that the USDA, says is safe. Right. And, he's against anything that is FDA and USDA, which he has a right to do because he does everything right. I think his certain situation was within his processing center. Whenever you harvest an animal, you're able to basically use a type of substance that you have to spray on the carcasses. And there was a lot of different reasons that they were doing enforcement, and they basically shut him down, and that he's been fighting lawsuits from day one. But he was basically saying, I'm not going to do it your way because we don't have to. And so I'm not going to get into what he's also. Amos Miller has a pretty loud voice. And so, but what you've seen because of what Amos Miller has done, you've seen a lot of other, they're attacking the Amish, right? Why are they attacking the Amish? It's because they're already vertically integrated out of this multinational system. And so to your point earlier, it's like, why would they go after it? Well, it's because it makes us stronger, it makes us healthier, and it's a community-based system, and it's decentralized from the centralized system. And there's thousands upon like right now, what's going on in Idaho? Look at that. They're shutting off the water to all the potato farmers in Idaho after they planted their crops. And so that's another, nefarious thing that's going on in real time. But it's just not only in the United States. Look what they happened in the Netherlands this year. Okay. Why is 3,000 farms being shut down in the Netherlands, which basically grow some of the best produce for Europe? That for many, many, many hundreds of years, Denmark and the Netherlands have been growing some of the best food in the world. Why are they shutting that system down? Because they're reinventing food. In here in Texas right now, we have over 10 to 12 microprocessing centers that are about to be out of business because of the tax the EPA is doing, because of basically, what's going on in the cattle industry as a whole, as far as our beef being sold overseas. And so there's way too many. But Amos Miller, if everybody wants to look at what happened to him, it's because he has a vertically integrated food system that they don't like. And there's a lot of reasons that they've used through the media saying that this is why, but really it comes down to he didn't want to use the products that the FDA and the USDA is telling him that he has to use. And we've proven within the beef initiative, we have no chemicals, no antibiotics, no steroids, nothing within our processing centers. We use all natural, all regenerative, and that's what he was trying to do. But once again, he's kind of an instigator. So if you do, toot a big loud horn, and you kind of shake the hornet's nest, you're going to have to pay the price. And so that's one thing that this nation's going to see is a lot of food systems being shut down because they are raising a big voice. But the beef initiative is decentralized. They can't shut us down because we're a vertical integration. We're replicating solutions. We're not scaling a linear approach to all this. And once again, that's how that we'll get back to this decentralized food system.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that whole story is just a great illustration of how backwards most people really have it when they think of the food system from what they hear on TV,
Yeah,
where they believe, like, oh, obviously they wouldn't poison us. That's crazy. Like, these people couldn't be that evil. Oh, we have regulators to protect the food, so it's good. When in reality, the regulators are the ones that are actually like forcing these small farmers who are trying to do things a natural way with nature, and they're forcing like them to use all these harmful chemicals and RFID tags and all this stuff that's like horrible. And it just is trying to they're just trying to pull it into their centralized system where they get to control everything and remove that decentralization, which is the way that humans have been eating and staying healthy forever. And
exactly. And well, right there, let's look at a multinational feed yard, factory farm processing center. Okay, they're finishing off the beeves at the last end of their lives. They're getting them nice and fat so they can harvest them and get the most money. Okay, whenever you have 10,000 cattle that are being harvested over a 1 day or 2 day period, yeah, that carries a lot of disease when you got 10,000 creatures all, you know, enclosed with each other. Well, within a decentralized, vertically integrated system that where we came from, we didn't have these massive factory farms. We didn't need these basically pharmaceuticals to fight this type of bacteria and these types of diseases. And so, if we can get rid of that centralized mono system into the decentralized, smaller integrated systems that is regenerative, that's based on biology, understanding biology, use biology to overcome bacteria. You don't use science to overcome bacteria that's created, through this multinational system that is so centralized, and it is disease ridden. Why do they recall, 40 tons of ground beef in the United States? Well, because it's a centralized system. If you have a cow that's sick in a decentralized regenerative system, you take that one cow out of the whole system, and you're not having to worry, you're not having to inoculate your whole herd. You just take the one issue out of that system. You can do that whenever you're a decentralized, vertically integrated system that's not relying on basically the fiat centralized mindset that you have to have 5,000 cattle all at the same place. You don't need that. Why do
just
you have to
stuffed
have
into a
five?
box.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's the processing. That's the thing about it. The processing center is basically the center of the universe of the issue in cattle and in hog and in poultry. It's the centralized processing center is that's what they are telling themselves on. And this is going to be a different discussion as we get, as we move forward throughout the next 2 years. But I see what's going to happen is the multinational system, the processing systems, they're ready to basically take those to the ground and reinvent the processing center where it takes out the labor force, and basically nobody understands what's going on in those processing centers. They're going with robotics. They're doing everything that they can to get humans out and basically not have no eyeballs on what's going on with those beeves, with those creatures.
And ultimately, they probably want to get rid of the cows too, right? Like
Of course
because
they
their
do.
end goal is just to make everything just industrial slop.
Yeah.
That's their dream.
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to turn beef into caviar in the Western Hemisphere, and that's what you're going to see. And they're not getting rid of the cow. They're not going to give the Western Hemisphere market access to that cow, therefore replacing the cow in our consumption model and our food systems in the United States, because we're the guinea pig of the world when it comes to food. The United States is. There's 27 countries that will not allow our food systems into their country. That's done for reasons. There's countries out there that are pretty smart, that they do not want any part of our basically experiment of food to come into their food systems. But yeah, they're going to take the animal and the land out of our consumption model when it comes to food, and they're going to turn it into factory in warehouse type of food systems that you won't have eyeballs on, but you'll gladly consume it because it tastes good, but it has no nutritional value to it whatsoever. And I think I wrote it in the Harvest of Deception. I can't remember, but it was right around that time, October of 2021. The FDA won a lawsuit, and they were able to in 2022, put 2,000 new chemicals into our food system, and they don't even have to tell us what that is. And that's through, once again, regulatory capture and basically the FDA and USDA working together. And it's under something called the GRAS rule, generally recognized as safe. And so if the FDA and the USDA says a chemical, we think it's safe, we're not going to tell you anything about it, but we're going to go ahead and put it into your food system. And don't worry about it, man. We got your back. And if people are still relying on those regulators, as you say, and for things like that to happen, just think our children of the United States of America in 2022 consumed 2,000 new chemicals that they didn't even know that they were consuming. Well, that's going to become the norm. That is the new standard. And so if you don't understand where your food is coming from, then it's Russian roulette moving forward as far as your metabolic health and as far as your food security and understanding what true market access to living really is. And whenever they take the land out of it, they take the cow out of the equation, then they can pump that factory food, to no ends. And I know that there's plenty of movies that have been written about sludge, everything. But I see that's where we're going as a nation, because unfortunately we'll consume anything because it tastes good. And that's something people need to understand, is that we're more basically, food is a drug now, and it's not really understood that how that happened. And most people are having to eat 3 to 5 to 6 times a day because they're always hungry. Well, if you're, let's say, carnivore, I mean, you eat 1 time a day or 2 times a day, and you don't take naps. You're not tired. You're in that ketosis, like you said. So there's a lot of things this nation needs to wake up to. They need to get back to the source of the seed of what we're doing here.
And as all of this is happening, the rates of obesity are going up, cancer skyrocketing, diabetes, mental illness, heart disease. Every single bad thing is increasing because these companies are very good at slipping in these poisons at just slow and gradually enough so it doesn't like kill people immediately, but it makes everyone sick.
Yes,
So it makes
yes,
it difficult to really be able to point the finger and say this is the exact thing that did it. There's just enough leeway for the doctors who are, now part of the pharmaceutical industry's, empire to just say, oh, it's genetic, just take this pill, and they're just all pushing the pills on people as these quick fixes that they sell. And people just continue to get sicker and sicker, and they are not realizing that the foundation of this tower is the healthy food, the
Yeah,
meat, the
it
red
is.
meat, the fatty red meat that humans have been eating for our entire existence. And by just cutting all of that noise out and fixing your diet, you can the whole fiasco starts to unravel at an individual level. All the things that you've been tricked by, all the things that were making you sick and keeping you held down will start to heal. And you'll start to learn more, and you'll start to find more interesting podcasts, and you'll go down a proverbial rabbit hole, as we all like to talk about, and find solutions to this. And I think this is a perfect time to finally transition to some happy news, because the Beef
Yeah,
Initiative is bringing solutions to the most important stakeholders in this process that we've talked about so much. So, why don't we just start from a very 101 level view? What is the Beef Initiative? I know we've touched on it several times, but I'd like to just give like a full overview of what this Beef Initiative thing is people keep hearing about on their favorite Bitcoiner podcast, and what's it doing for both
sure.
beef producers and consumers.
Real quick, I'm going to touch upon, and I'm going to wake some people up real quick as far as the metabolical diseases. Okay. You talked about diabetes, obesity, and everything that we're suffering, mental illness. Mental illness is an epidemic in this country right now. That's done through nutritional starvation. That's one of the basically, aspects of it. Okay, let's look at children's health. I always ask, what's the fastest metabolical disease of children? Everybody goes, oh, it's diabetes or obesity. Yeah, those are leading right now, but what's coming up next to that is fatty liver disease in our children of this nation. Why is that happening? It's because they're eating too much high fructose corn syrup and too many seed oils that's been injected under the Gross rule, basically, and nobody even knows that they're eating and ingesting it, but we're causing that type of metabolical disease for our children in the United States right now. If you don't have health as a nation, you're not a healthy nation. I don't care how rich you are or whatever you think you have as a military. If you do not have metabolical health as a nation, then you're already lost. And so that's what we have to understand. But going back to the Beef Initiative, what is the Beef Initiative? Well, it's confusing to a lot of people. But what it is, it's a vertical integration back into your life. It's a vertical integration back into basically agriculture from where we came from. I talk about, the vertical integration. What does that really mean? Well, we basically are giving you market access to food that starts 6 feet deep in the soil, from the soil to the forage to the cow to the producer to the processor to the distribution to your fork. The Beef Initiative is in control of. We're not part of the multinational system whatsoever. And so what you can rely on is that whenever you go out there and you shake a rancher's hand, either physically or digitally, through the Beef Initiative, and you can have trust and faith, and you can verify that where your food is coming from. The people that basically raised that food, who basically stewarded the land, the input systems of the land and the animals. It's basically that vertical integration back into health as a nation, health into the cattle industry of this nation, and basically integration back into our land that is being stolen. So we give you basically market access to those people that live and die to feed you, that need your help and support. And it's not done through a centralized marketing, apparatus. We're a grassroots organization. We're bootstrapped by basically, I liquidated my life. I've been homeless for about 4 years because I've been traveling around the world, but we've never accepted any investment into the Beef Initiative. We've done it all by sweat equity and the people that we've had come in, and, through volunteers or through consultants and everything. So we're a decentralized food system that this country is really yearning for right now. But not only do we give you market access to the best and the cleanest beef and the most tastiest beef in the world through over, 250 producers across the United States. I'm trying to get that to 1,000 as soon as we can. And through, help through, podcasts like this, because we don't do a lot of marketing and advertising. It's all word of mouth. But we also have 5 basically newsletter publications that we put out weekly. We also have beefnews.org that gives you up to date, basically, intelligence of your food industry in the United States of America. People like Brianna, and that the technology behind beefnews.org is, roughshot. It's June. And, he's running that system. We have beefnews.org. We have cattlemen'sfeast.com. We have beefinitiative.com. We have, what is it? I'm sorry. There's so
The
many
beef
URLs.
maps, is that right?
Yeah,
There's like a
yeah,
map. Hmm.
yeah, Beef Maps. That's basically a global mapping system that we're releasing. We're really going to tout that whenever we're in Nashville for the Cattlemen's Feast at Bitcoin 24. It's a mapping system. It's a decent screw Google Maps, man. That's old school. You're going to go to beefmaps.com, man, and it is. It's a fast. We got people all over the world that are flooding into our mapping system. So you can go to Beef Maps, you can go to beefindex.com, you can go Beef.Support. That's all of the support that we're giving to all of our producers and ranchers that want to be a part of our index. That is basically, it's a word of mouth index. It's open sourced, it's crowdsourced, and so we have an autonomous network that we've built, and that's what I really like to talk about. Most you look at all these advertisements that you see if you do a Google search. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but they're on the application layer of the internet. Okay, we're back to the base layer of the internet. We're an autonomous network that you can't shut down. We're a decentralized platform that has many different URLs that are basically not connected, but they're nodes into that one system that's called the Beef Initiative. And so I've built, and my team, and especially Roughshot, June, we've built an autonomous network system that nobody else has done in agriculture before. So we've got data centers that we're building out that can't be shut down. We've got Bitcoin. The Bitcoin ethos is what the Beef Initiative was established upon. So it is that decentralized type of network that we're now turning into something that looks like it's a centralized network, but it's a very decentralized autonomous network that we've been building out. Like I said, I went dark because we had to do some building, we had to do some coding, we had to do some developing. But we started out with a static website in the very beginning. It ain't static no more, man. It's an autonomous network that we're really going to be proud of, and a lot of people are starting to flood into it. I mean, we've got e-commerce, for we're selling so much beef for our ranchers that come in. It's like, hey guys, quit fighting us, man. We're not here to compete with you. We're basically giving, consumers market access to your freaking ranch. And they're starting to understand that. It's very complex, but we've simplified it to where it's not so hard. If you go to like beefinitiative.com, go to the bottom there, and it's got every one of our little networks that is decentralized. And you do that right now, Ben. Look at that and see what. And I want to talk about the last one. I'm going to say that one for last.
Let's
And
do
go to
it.
the bottom footer of the homepage there.
Bottom footer, searching now. Let's
And
see.
I want to go line item
Okay,
one. Yeah. And
got
just
it.
start naming those off. Start list.
Beefnews.org.
Okay, I mentioned that. That's the best up to date, basically, agricultural news in the United States of America, working with legislators right now. We're writing policy. We're going to be doing everything. That's through beefnews.org. So if you want to be up to speed on everything that's going on in agriculture and the cattle industry right now, go there. Okay, that's that. But also, whenever you go to beefnews.org, as you're reading an article maybe about a rancher, you can also buy their product. You can buy it with fiat or Bitcoin. So you don't even have to leave your article. You can still be reading your article and buy 2 boxes of beef from the rancher that you're trying to support as you're learning about their input systems and how they take care of the land and the animals and their family and their community. So it's a fascinating platform that Roughshot built out. And so that one's really getting a lot of traction right now. So that's beefnews.org. What's the next one?
Beefindex.org.
Beef Index right now. That's the open source crowdsource that I only asked 3 producers to be in the index in the very beginning. That was Justin Trammell of Panhandle Meats, Cole Bolton of K&C Cattle, and Jason Rick of Rick Ranches. All that index from then on has been word of mouth, people coming in voluntarily. We didn't go solicit them, that we didn't, market to them. We didn't make them pay a bunch of fiat money to be in our index. All they had to do was be very transparent with us and saying, this is our regenerative practices. And everybody that comes into that index is now people are finding them through index. So that's been an open source crowdsource index that really gave us a foundational layer to really start expanding out across the United States.
And I'll
What's the
let other
next?
people go find it themselves, but I just scrolled down a list and there's a lot more than 3 now.
Yeah, there's hundreds in there right now, man. Hundreds upon hundreds. And that's all word of mouth. And that's not us going out there and selling to them. That's because of word of mouth brand identity for all the right reasons.
Amazing. Just building that community feel up from the ground
Yes.
up as well. You're really being
Yes.
that network, sort of the inter sponge that's bringing it all together. As I can see.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. What's after index there on the page there?
Beefmaps.com.
There you go, man. That one's going to be fun. Okay, this is the vision here. Okay, Texas Slim's vision. Okay, you go to maps, man. One of my best friends in the world right now is old Captain Sid. Okay, rite of passage, right? He's
So
living over there
awesome.
until,
I love his story.
oh man, it's a fascinating story. He came to the first conference. So let's look at beef maps. Okay, like I say, screw Google mapping system. My vision over the next 3 years that you can go anywhere in the world, go to maps, beefmaps.com, and you're going to be able to find a place to stay. You're going to find a place to basically enjoy your vacation, be it in Colombia, be it in El Salvador, be it in Chiang Mai, Thailand, be it in Paris, France. It does not matter. You're going to be able to go to beefmaps.com, find a local producer, eat the best food on the planet, and basically be able to have an integrated vacation lifestyle anywhere in the world just by going to beefmaps.com. And so one person that's really helping us with that is old Captain Sid. He calls himself Evan. That's his name now. He's going by Evan now, but I'm always going to call him Captain Sid. But anyways, we have a fascinating journey. What he's doing now, he went across the United States doing all the Bitcoin meetups, right? Well, for years now, he's been doing reconnaissance for the Beef Initiative. And so he goes and visit ranches and farms across the United States. And of course, we did it together across Asia. And so he's doing reconnaissance and he's reporting back to the Beef Initiative and he's helping us build out the mapping system for this decentralized, vertically integrated food system based on sound money, sound food, sound communications. And so the mapping system is going to be a very powerful force. And we've got a lot of Bitcoiners that are helping us basically engineer that mapping system. That one's going to be fascinating. And we're going to really release that whenever we're in Nashville, like I said. So pay attention to beefmaps.com.
I love that because that gives people a real visual to start planning their, how they can connect with these
Well,
farmers and ranchers.
yeah, I mean, what happened? Sid went to Colorado when he was riding his Harley across the United States. I said, hey, you need to go out to Colorado. You're going to Colorado? He goes, yeah. And I said, well, you need to go see Jason Rick. Jason's the third rancher that I shook hands with. Okay. He's a pioneer of the Beef Initiative. He is the Beef Initiative. So is Cole Bolton and so is Justin Trammell. But what old Jason did, he just bought a new ranch that butts up to his land that they already owned. Okay, now he's got an Airbnb. Now he's got a rancher storefront. He's increasing his herd. He's the best educator that we know. He just received a $10,000 grant that all the Bitcoiners basically paid forward. And so we gave him a $10,000 grant in Bitcoin. And now he's creating internship programs. He's educating his community. He has people coming to him to stay at his Airbnb for a week. They're getting into regenerative practices. They're bringing their family. And so you're going to be able to find him through beefmaps.com. Not only you're going to stay at his Airbnb, you're going to eat his basically beef, and you're going to be taught by one of the best regenerative educators out there in the United States. He's leading the way. Just to think, whenever we have 10,000 Jason Ricks, across this world, where you can go anywhere in the world and go spend your vacation, understand and vertically integrate yourself into a decentralized food and lifestyle. you know, Captain Sid and I, from the very beginning, we call it the international lifestyle that people just don't understand yet. People are starting to understand now.
And speaking of this power of bringing the community together, the next one on the list, beefsummits.com. Tell me about that
Yes.
one.
Okay, all right. Back in 2021, right after I wrote The Harvest of Deception, we had a couple of people on a Zoom call, and I looked at everybody in the eyes on that Zoom. I don't use Zoom anymore, by the way, but, and there's reasons behind that. But I looked at everybody and I said, hey, we're going to have 4 freaking conferences next year across the United States. And everybody was like, what? I said, hell yeah. I said, let's get busy. And they said, we don't have any money. And I said, it don't matter. Let's get busy. And so we had Kerrville. We had a conference. Our second one was out there at Jason Rick's place out there in Crawford, Colorado, and that's a very beautiful part of Colorado. And then of course we had White Oak Pastures out there in Bluffton, Georgia, at White Oak Pastures with Will Harris. And then of course we had the Nashville conference that we had at Bitcoin Park. So our first year we put off 4 conferences with no money, all word of mouth, and all basically because a lot of the facilitation of all the Bitcoiners out there and letting me talk on podcasts. So the first year we had 4 conferences, and we didn't use fiat money or mentality to make that happen. And of course, we've had several more. We had 9 functions in Australia. We had a couple of summits in Australia. That was led by Babes Who Bitcoin, Liz, our favorite
She's
Bitcoin
awesome.
babe.
I know her.
Yeah, and so she helped us put on conferences. So we had a couple of meetups in Asia. We've had them in Australia. I think we've had over 21 summits, conferences, and dinners in the United States so far. And our biggest one yet, well, that's going to be in July. And that's going to be basically Nashville, biggest cattleman's feast ever, man. And
Can't wait.
I'm pushing the envelope on this one, man. I told them that they're going to have to tell me no. So I want to sell so many tickets that they said, screw it, man. We're just going to have to give these guys a main stage. Fuck it. We're going to shut everything down. We've sold too much beef, man. We're going to bring all this beef from Texas too, man. We're going to do a convoy. I tell everybody we're bootlegging moonshine and about, 10 tons of beef from Texas to Tennessee, and it's going to be a shot across the world as far as the biggest international cattleman's feast that the world has ever seen. So
I'll be
this one's,
there and I cannot wait. Sounds
oh yes.
incredible.
Did you buy a VIP ticket?
I got the general admissions ticket plus the Cattleman's Feast through Crowd Health. Actually, Crowd Health
Okay,
is my
fantastic. I
ticket to
wanted
the
to
events.
talk about Crowd Health
Hmm.
next because Crowd Health, we've been really good friends with Crowd Health for years now, but they stepped up and said, "Hey, man, we want to start partnering up." And I said, "Hey, I want to partner up with you because they have this new metabolic marker that they're doing for the carnivore crowd in the carnivore
Yes.
industry. So it's all just coming together symbiotically. It's beautiful. So they're our number one lead sponsor for the Cattleman's Feast in Nashville, man. And I've been working with Josh. I already knew Andy. Man, those guys are really based and they're doing everything right when it comes to health.
Yeah,
So
and I
either
had Andy on really early on in the show,
did
but I
you?
need to have them on again to talk about the
You really
carnivore Crowd
do.
Health because that
Yes.
is just an amazing. It's perfect for their business model of just having a new separate crowd of people who are on a carnivore diet because we know as carnivores that we're going to be way healthier, so our expenses are going to be much lower, and
Yes.
so it's a great way to really put your money where their mouth is. And they even said, "Hey, we'll make a vegan crowd too if you guys want to, and then you'll have like a real free market competition. Let's see who spends the least on their
There
health
you go.
expenses." Let's go.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and they're not asking for permission and they're rewriting what healthcare is in the United States. And I love that about them. And the metabolic marker and just the carnivores, and how many Bitcoiners are carnivores. It's like, hey, man, where are y'all going to get your beef? Oh, you're going to get it through the gates of the beef initiative. So, it's a no brainer. And so, talking about the Cattleman's Feast in Nashville, we also have Better Fed Foods. Okay. A lot of people don't know who they are. Well, they're the basically leading, one of the leading companies now that are doing regenerative inputs for soil, for forage, and for the animals themselves. Instead of the commodity chemical pharmaceutical based system, now we have a company like Better Fed Foods that are using regenerative inputs that are all natural, organic, that are basically rewriting the books on how we input, the land, the animals, and the in the forage itself. So we have some great sponsors for the Cattlemen's Feast in Nashville, and we've got a couple more that we'll be announcing coming up pretty soon too. But going
Amazing.
back to Nashville, let's talk about the tomahawk ribeye eating contest.
Yes.
So what that is like I come from the top of Texas. We got something up here called the Big Texan. Okay. I think a lot of people know about what that is. You eat a 72-ounce steak and all the fixings in an hour, you get it for free. Okay, so I had this in me and my co-founder, which is JP Valdez. He's a co-founder of Oshi as well. We were talking one day. He goes, "We should have a tomahawk ribeye eating contest." I was like, "Hell yeah, we got more tomahawks than anybody in the nation." So what we're doing is we're going to have a tomahawk ribeye eating contest, and it's a $500 contestant sign up, which goes into our I Am Texas Sim Foundation, which is a nonprofit that we're basically giving back. That's the one that gave the grant to Jason Rick, of course. So what we're going to do is we're going to adopt a rancher. And so we're going to have a tomahawk ribeye eating contest. So everybody that's out there LARPing about tomahawks will come eat a tomahawk and be a part of the tomahawk ribeye eating contest. And this is how we bring everybody together to give that voice to the rancher that they've never had. And so if you sign up, $500 sign up, or if you want to sponsor somebody to eat the, as many tomahawks as they can in 1 hour, then you're giving that basically a digital voice to the rancher that they've never had. And that's how we switch this consumer demand away from centralized marketing straight into the beef initiative. And every carnivore out there, every influencer out there, come adopt a rancher through the gates of the Beef Initiative and the I Am Texas Slim Foundation and be a part of the Cattlemen's Feast and the Tomahawk Ribeye Eating Contest.
I love it. And Sean
Yes.
Baker's going to be there. He's going to be out there munching away. I know he's part of the conference, so you
Well,
get
I'm gonna
to.
I'm gonna I'm gonna start trolling Sean. He came to Nashville whenever we did the basically we had the U.S. Cattlemen's Association convention there. We spoke there, but Sean came and spoke at the Cattlemen's Feast there and everything. But I'm gonna start trolling Sean because he eats so much beef. I'm just gonna send him some tomahawks and say, hey, let's get busy in Nashville, and just we want It's a fun time, man. Everybody, let's go have some fun. Let's show the world how you do this. And so it's not a competition. Everybody come. I mean, it's going to be a hell of. I don't know how big it's going to get, but I think it's going to get pretty big. So
And I'm not sure if you saw me doing this or not, but I've been spamming Ken Berry. He
yes,
lives in
yes,
Nashville, and he needs to
yes.
get down there. And I want to see a
Well,
Ken Berry versus Sean Baker tomahawk battle.
we have to troll these guys with great intentions, with a lot of grace and gratitude. We're not making fun of anybody, but it's like, hey guys, let's go save the cattle industry in the United States of America. Let's do it with what you guys do best. But what we did within all of this, and I wanted to save this for last, is that the meat mafia, Brett and Harry. Harry started writing for the Harvest of Deception series very early on, and they kind of blew up, and they blew up big, right? So we're basically co-branding this Cattleman's Feast in Nashville with the Meat Mafia, and of course the Tomahawk Ribeye Eating Contest is Brett and Harry are really Brett's been really networking with a lot of people. I think he's been talking to Ken Berry a little bit, so he's a hell of a networker, Brett. So I think we're gonna hopefully get. I won't speak too soon, but we'll see. But hopes are high, and we'll see what happens.
I'm going to continue spamming him on Twitter regardless.
Yes, yes. All the beef you can eat, man. We have to. We have to pull this off. But we have to do it as a community. We all have to work together. We all have to bring it together because it's the center of the universe. After Nashville, man, the reason I love Bitcoin 24 and 24 is that we get this international exposure. Everybody gets to see what we're doing here in the United States. Everybody gets to see what we're doing in Texas. Because Cole Bolton, K&C Cattle, he has a USDA processing center down there in Luling, Texas, south of Austin. All of the beef is coming out of that processing center. We have multiple producers that are the best protocol for beef in the United States. So we're bringing the best beef in the world straight from Texas, the heart of Texas, right into Nashville. And who's going to be the butcher? Well, that's old Johnny, man. He's been doing the Cattleman's Feast. Me and him been doing it for a couple of years. But the three of us are the ones that engineered the Cattleman's Feast, and all of us kind of threw in. I come from the top of Texas, and the multinational system, the cattle industry of Texas. Cole comes from East Texas. I tell everybody he talks really funny, and because he comes from East Texas, I come from West Texas. But you think about Johnny, you think about Cole, you think about old Slim here. Man, we've got so many generations of basically beef intelligence that we're bringing to Nashville this year. It's going to be a hell of a party. And, after we have Nashville, though, I want to start promoting and bringing beef, to every state like we're doing with this Cattleman's Feast. I'd love to have a Cattleman's Feast everywhere across the United States, touting the local producers and ranchers that grow that beef so they can build out their community, that we can bring awareness of the processing centers, of the attack of, our cattle industry, attack on food. That's what the Cattleman's Feast really is about. It's to have a damn good time, but it's also to say, hey, this is what's going on in our food systems. And one good thing that we're going to do Saturday is we're going to have the beef intelligence panel, and we've got Dennis Porter. He's going to be there, which he's doing amazing work with policy within Bitcoin. And he's got so much proof of work. I met him up in Connecticut at our last Cattleman's Feast at Mass Adoption Freedom Fest. And so, we've got a lot of people that have been working for many years, and they're all coming into the Cattleman's Feast in Nashville. We have Dustin Kittle, which he's now, a lawsuit against the Biden administration right now, Farmers versus Biden. You go to beefnews.org, you can see everything that Dustin's fighting right now. So once again, it's not just having a damn good time eating the best beef in the world. You're also going to learn everything that's going on within the cattle industry and the food systems. So.
Yeah, and if we didn't mention, this is like at the biggest Bitcoin conference in the world. This is happening. So this really
Exactly.
shows this convergence of the Bitcoin and meat communities, which there's a
Yes.
big one for both of them. And I don't know what your thoughts are on this. I know you're working extremely hard on bringing them together. I certainly am too. But I just think there's so much more, to do there, because
Yeah.
when I talk to Bitcoiners about carnivore, they're usually more open to it, and some of them are into it. We know like Saifedean has been promoting that for a long time, and a lot of other people have jumped in. But on the carnivore side, hardly any of them are really into Bitcoin. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's an even bigger opportunity, and which is why I really want to get Ken Berry over there and continue to get Sean Baker down the rabbit hole, because he's been on Saifedean's podcast, and he's done I think at least one of these conferences before. So he's interested in Bitcoin. He talks about it every once in a while, but he's not orange pilled yet. We got
No.
work to do for him, and I don't think Ken Berry has ever even heard of it. Oh, by the way, Dr. Anthony Chafee, not sure if you followed him, but I did a podcast with him. He's one of the biggest names in the carnivore world, and I gave him a little sprinkling of the orange pill after we stopped recording, just telling him like, man, you need to read the Bitcoin Standard. Bitcoiners and carnivores are meant to be one. There's
Yes.
so many similarities.
Well, let's talk about that integration. My aha moment. I know exactly where I was when I said beef and Bitcoin. I know where I was. I saw it. It was wah. And so let's talk about that. That was years ago. Well, we've got proof of work. We know why beef and Bitcoin work. It's a vertical integration back into a money and food system that most of the world does not understand yet. And that's okay. It's early on, right? But now through the gates of the beef initiative, there's no telling how much beef and Bitcoin has basically been sold and bought and basically raised, and with everything exchanged in a peer-to-peer decentralized food and money system. It is a new money system that is really, really, really helping our producers and ranchers. And if you want to look at somebody that doesn't understand Bitcoin, a good entry point for them is, okay, if you're selling your beef online, okay, you have to go through a credit card system. Okay, how much money do you think an independent rancher producer, let's say somebody like Justin Trammell up here in the Texas Panhandle, not a big operation, not a small operation, a good operation that feeds a 30-mile radius. They had to pay out $38,000 last year in credit card fees alone. Okay, whenever you sell
Crazy.
beef and Bitcoin, you're eliminating the credit card company, It's a peer-to-peer transaction. You're eliminating that 3.25% fee, whatever it is now. It's probably up to 4% by now. But you are saving that money for that rancher by going peer to peer and allowing that rancher to accept Bitcoin. He can't keep all of that in Bitcoin, but he can eliminate that credit card fee just by accepting within the system that we have. He can change that over to fiat to run his business, but he can keep that 3 to 4% in Bitcoin. Now he has a store of value. Now he has a savings account. And now he's basically getting back to where how my grandfather raised agriculture in the United States, where he has a money system that is a store of value instead of an inflationary basically tool that's going to make him more poor, just so he can accept money from a peer-to-peer, somebody that already knows him, doesn't want to use a credit card, but that's the only system. Well, now they got Bitcoin. Okay, so it's a store of value. It's a good decentralized peer-to-peer system that allows that producer rancher to eliminate some of these fees that are driving themselves out of business because they're trapped in that centralized monetary fiat system. So, I
And the
mean, the rabbit hole
savings,
goes so deep. Yeah, the savings.
that savings is really just the beginning, I was going to say, because
Sure.
like not only are you saving tons of money, but you are really just bringing back the peer-to-peer nature of commerce at
Yes.
the food level, which
Yes.
is what you're talking about so much. And really like the core of the beef initiative is getting things back to peer-to-peer. And I think that's a good uh, thing for people to keep in mind is the P2P of Bitcoin and beef can work together so well.
Yes.
When you remove these third parties out of the system, and as we've been talking about throughout the episode, third parties are never our friend in the food system,
No.
especially
No.
the ones that are really trying to force their way into it, like the giant entities everywhere just trying to have their way with how things work. You can remove all of those and make it as simple as consumer comes up, they pull out their phone, they pull out their Bitcoin wallet, and you do a transaction. Someone can buy the beef from you instantly. No fees, like you said. I mean, that's just an absolute game changer for, I mean, not just beef producers, but all producers of everything. This is
Yes.
completely removing all of that, junk in the middle that people had to deal with of having all these rent-seeking third parties getting in their business. And no, there's no business more important to clean up and turn back to a person-to-person relationship than food.
100%. I mean, you look at that and you look about, the money's broken. And, how can you raise a cow that should have a really good life before, it goes into harvest? How are you supposed to be able to make a profit off of that beef whenever diesel prices go up in an inflationary fiat system? Input costs, fertilizer costs, everything. How do you plan for that? You can't. Okay, so what do you need? You need that store of value to where you can fight that inflationary, deception that, basically the Fed is doing to agriculture in the United States of America. I mean, we've got producers now that started, back in 2021, ranchers that have been accepting Bitcoin. They're full coiners now because they took that model just to eliminate that credit card fee. And so think about just you don't have to keep all that, just 3%. Remember, let's dollar cost average, right? How do producers and ranchers dollar cost average? It's because Bitcoiners buy their beef in Bitcoin and they allow that basically rancher to earn that Bitcoin through that relationship that is peer to peer. Okay, value for value exchange. This is how we get adoption, folks. It's not all of us sitting on our coins or our sats and saying, I'm never going to spend it. Well, if you're going to go buy beef and you're going to buy it through a producer through the beef initiative, if you're going to buy $600 worth of beef and you don't want to, hit your stack over there on the side, well, go buy $600 worth of Bitcoin and then use it and give it to the rancher. Come on, man. Use common sense. So, we're in abundance here at this point in time, even though Bitcoin is scarce. Let's change that poverty mindset into this is how we basically overtake an industry and reinvent a parallel economy through a decentralized money and food system. We've got to share the wealth of abundance, and we've got to basically educate. Don't go up to a freaking rancher and say, "Do you take Bitcoin?" We're not used car salesmen here. Establish a relationship, shake a rancher's hand, say, "Hey, why do you do what you do? Tell me, how can I help you? What are your pain points?" When you have a conversation like that, you know where it leads to? Bitcoin. So you don't have to push it, man. If Bitcoin's the new money system, if it's the new store of value, we don't have to push it in that way. We can educate through relationship building and relationship management with those people that live and die to feed you. And this is what we have to start bringing to everybody's awareness. If you're a carnivore influencer out there, man, you've got to get decentralized within your thought systems. Who is raising that beef? What are they missing right now? They're missing a store of value. They're missing sound money. They're having to use debt to raise a herd. No, 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 no. The new store of value, that new replacing that debt system, those debt financial tools, well, there's a new one, and it's called Bitcoin. And it takes basically education, stewardship, and relationship management by shaking a rancher's hand. That's how we get there. And that's what we've proven in the beef initiative. It works. We have a new system that basically has proof of work. It's foundationally set. It has brand identity, and we're going to turn pop culture on its head now through stuff like the Cattleman's Feast and getting people to LARP. Let's LARP about beef and Bitcoin.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. And I know that there are going to be people listening out there who do have something that they sell to the public, and they're starting to realize that this is not hard, people. It's not hard to just
It's not.
accept Bitcoin. All you have to do is, and maybe you can actually give a little bit of an overview since you're so used to pitching these folks, but it's as easy as putting up a sign that says Bitcoin accepted and a QR code, and you have a
Yep.
wallet set up. Like, are there any other pieces of the technology stack that you'd recommend for those looking to just get up and running immediately?
Well, we've used them all. We've looked at everything. I mean, we've had a great relationship with IBEX, but they're not in the United States now. We have a lot of, this is part of transformation and adoption. You got to fight the powers that be at every little angle. But we've looked at OpenNode. OpenNode's really good. It's a good system. But BTC Pay Server, that's definitely. I really love everything that those guys are doing right now, and utility has to be built in for the general user. So, you have really good wallet systems, but, if you're just into this, it just beginning, it depends on, you got to understand what KYC is. What is KYC? What is non-KYC? There's a lot of Bitcoin companies out there right now that give a lot of really good education, like Unchained, River. There's a lot of good, Swan, everything that they've done. If you're just getting into Bitcoin, go educate yourself first. Understand what works for you. Understand what, hard, cold storage is. Understand, what, a true passphrases mean, understand what, uh, it's interesting. If you look at our money system, we used to be terrified to buy a pair of shoes off the internet, right? Now you buy 10 at a time. That took years to have that utility, layers of encryption, layers of software, layers of development and programming. Okay. Well, in Bitcoin, you don't need all those layers. You need one or two layers that you're comfortable with as far as getting your Bitcoin, understanding how to steward that Bitcoin, and have your own Bitcoin that is actually your Bitcoin and not some exchanges, basically note, like they did with gold. Oh, I've got plenty of gold. Do you have a gold note, or do you actually have the physical gold?
The
What does that
IOUs.
require? Yes. Well, it requires people understanding what money is and what money isn't, and what basically, centralization, what the Fed is. Once again, safety in, Sailor. There's so many people out there that you can go to, say, I want to go this route. Some people go through Swan. Some people go straight into getting their own little wallet, and, there's different companies that are under attack. You have the Samurai wallet, you have the Moon wallet, you have Cash App, you have, everybody's getting into this game here. The individual has to go out there and find out which technology they understand first that makes that entry point to where you go deeper into where you basically, create a legacy within money with understanding what a store of value is and how to protect that. How do you protect your sats? How do you protect your future? Well, you learn 12 words up here and you can travel the world and you don't need anything more than that, and you can live a sovereign lifestyle. That's where you end up, going as far as your own personal vision of how you steward Bitcoin education within your own consciousness. And it's not just one size fits all. Everybody has an entry point into Bitcoin. Go find out what it is. I tell everybody just do it through the gates of the Beef Initiative or through hope.com or through, one of the exchanges. I don't know. You tell me. I haven't done a lot of Bitcoin lately because I had to go out there and get very deep into the cattle industry, right? And so that was in September that I went dark. And so but there's a lot of new things that come, daily. And that's one thing that Bitcoin 24 is very valuable too, as far as learning that entry point of education. I know it's a lot of crypto, a lot of shitcoin there, but there's a lot of value of Bitcoin there too.
Yeah, that's something I can speak on actually, just the different entry points people can really find to learn about this stuff. Because that's really what, while you've been head down grinding on Beef Initiative, I've been head down grinding on building like educational resources on this stuff. I consider the podcast just one piece of that. I made a website called whybitcoinonly.com, and there's a section on there that's all about food, like why you need to understand the Bitcoin connection to food, and you're in there a bunch of times. And I'm making another website called whycarnivore.com, which is going to
Right.
have a section about Bitcoin. So basically, these are both,
Perfect.
sort of rabbit hole guides down each of those things, but they're going to have a dedicated section. It's like, this is why you need to understand this other thing too that really helps you. And
Yes.
one of the guests I had on recently is Matthew Leshak, who wrote Fiat Food. This
Mm-hmm.
is a great resource for people that want to just take a deep dive into really all the stuff we talked about today. He really lays out that
He does.
whole mess of the government and the big pharma and the big food all really coming together to just crack down on our healthy food systems. And go for
I,
it.
I met Matthew. I've talked to him a couple of times. It is a fantastic book. He did a very good job of integrating understanding of the fiat food system. And he asked me he goes, did you write a book? I said, no, I could have wrote a book after the harvest deception, but I had to go out there and build a new cattle industry. And so that's what I've been doing. But I'll write the book later. But people like him are really, really good to help out, understanding to people funnel into the beef initiative because he identifies the issues so well, even better than I did in the harvest of deception. And then, all right, now funnel into the solution. And we've got years and years of proof of work into the solution of what he talks about. And so that's where all this is coming together. That's the perfect storm of what all of us in the Bitcoin space have been able to do collectively, not even knowing each other, but just having that like-mindedness. That's where this is such a powerful movement right now. It's all decentralized, but it's coming from a very holistic, symbiotic approach that we're all accepting and working together with. So, thank you for educating the way that you are because it's needed. And, just we'll have more talks about how we can basically give exposure to your type of education because it'll come back to us.
Yeah, and this is just the beauty of Bitcoin's just community aspect, where every single member of the network, by helping the network in any way, you're helping every other person within it. And
Yes.
like as a Bitcoin, like when I look at Michael Saylor buying a bunch of Bitcoin, that helps me. So
Yep.
it really brings together. It doesn't matter what your ethical reasons or what your drive is, what your motivation is. Even the most selfish people on earth are still benefiting when they still find a place in Bitcoin because everything
Yeah.
around them that's happening that's improving the network is helping them get richer. So
Well, and the value and the abundance of relationships and the people that I've met in the Bitcoin, I could never have met the type of people and the wonderful type of truly based, character. People like, think about that. How do you meet people from all around the world? You can't. You can't. The Bitcoin network is a fascinating phenomenon that very few people understand because they're not allowing themselves to get there. They're not allowing their mindset to get there first. And, working in agriculture and ranching, I call it a poverty mindset. It really is. There's a huge poverty mindset that was instilled in us whenever we commoditize and subsidize our industry the way that we have. And I told everybody that comes through the Beef Initiative, this is not about competition, man. This is about collaboration. And that's what, if we can get even better in the Bitcoin space as far as that collaboration, lose the poverty mindset. There's abundance of wealth of knowledge out there that everybody can start, but it starts with the individual. Nobody's going to save you, folks. It starts with you putting your foot down and saying, I'm going to quit validating all the deceptions, and I'm going to go steward and engineer a new integration of my life through Bitcoin and clean, pure food. I do it through beef. And I recommend doing it through beef above and beyond anything else. So
I'm with you on that one, 100%.
Yes.
Before we started recording this episode, we
Yes.
talked a little bit about the motivation that you feel to push all of these things because of the next generation. You have a
Yes.
son who's 20 years old, and you're looking forward to future generations here. I would love to hear you just talk about why this is such a powerful motivator for you, that we fix all these problems we're seeing for the sake of people who are young today or haven't even been born yet for the future.
Sure. Well, it gets pretty touchy with me because I had to tell my son that I was going to die because that's what I thought. I had about 6 weeks to live. I had to look in that little boy's eyes at the time and said, hey, your dad's not going to be here. One thing we've done as a nation, though, we've stolen the innocence of our children through all this nefarious bullshit that's been happening across this nation within money, within COVID, within education. We're robbing innocence and we're robbing health out of that innocence as well. Our children of this nation are being robbed. And if we do not take personal responsibility for what they're having to experience as their life in their formidable years, their core belief system years, we do not have a nation anymore. We have something that's very fragmented, that's very devalued, and it's being robbed because we're robbing the innocence of our children. We're robbing the nutritional value of that basically that life that needs this nutrition. It needs that abundance of market access to strength, empowerment. And until we look at the children of this nation and we quit being so selfish as adults that we're not focused on our children first and foremost, then, we've lost character as a nation. And so that's why I really, whenever I knew that I was going to live, I said, man, this is going to be something that we have to do. So my why, my whatnot, my how was established whenever I really said I was going to liquidate my life and make this my life's mission. It's about saving children's lives. The future of a generation is really, being jeopardized right now. I saw my son have to go through high school, during the COVID years. And, I took him with me to Australia. He came over with Liz and I to Australia. And then we toured Australia for a month. And then we toured Thailand for a month. That's whenever, Sid had the idea, and we talked about, this is my son's rite of passage. And that's how Sid came up with the rite of passage. And so we were able to give my son a rite of passage. And I think every child in the United States deserves a different rite of passage. And it's through the gates of the Beef Initiative. It's through meeting these people that have character and have intentionality within their lives, within basically their consciousness. It's that vertical integration of what are you consuming, from audio to video to food. And we've got to change it. We've got to decentralize it for our kids first and foremost, because they're being captured in ways that no other generation in this nation has been captured before. And so you look at my son now, he's about to be 20. Well, he's been mentored by Captain Sid. He's been mentored by Pringle Mac and, everybody over there in Australia. Now Brett with the Meat Mafia. He's in Austin. My son isn't living in Austin right now. And so Brett and my son are basically, he's mentoring my son's name is Finn. We'll just say it that. And Brett and him, well, my son is now, he's a beast, man. You should see him, but he's proof positive that this all works. And so Brett's going to mentor him because I don't think my son's going to listen to me that much more anymore. He's tired of his dad bumping his gums all the time. So, this is a mentoring system that has come through these people that have character, have intentionality, and now they're taking on the ownership and the responsibility to lead the next generation of children coming up in this nation. And a lot of ranchers are doing that as well. A lot of ranchers are opening up their gates. Jason Rick Ranchers, Cole Bolton, he's always been part of FFA, Justin Trammell right here in Canyon, Texas. We're all mentoring the next generation, and we're doing it through basically the integration of food that we're bringing to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and to stuff just one more Bitcoinism in here at the buzzer, it's all about the time preference, lowering
Yes, it
people's
is.
time preference. And as you said, just to call out the adults out there, it's so important to put the kids first and the grandchildren first and just future generations first. If we just maintain that mindset of just stop thinking about yourself so much, think about the future, we're going to have better solutions for everybody. And unfortunately, so many people are unable to really do that because as the money continues to break, as fiat money continues to collapse, we see inflation increase. It becomes difficult for people to, function financially. And as people eat worse and worse food, at the same time, their physical and mental capacity also decreases. So we're really getting the double whammy here of people becoming less financially free from inflation and less, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually free because their health is deteriorating. So this is why people like you and me just constantly just beat the drum of Bitcoin and beef.
Yeah,
Bitcoin and beef. They fix these two things so perfectly. If you just eat a bunch of meat, you're going to fix your health. If you stop saving in fiat funny money tokens, you're going to fix your finances. And even if you don't have very much money, you can just buy $5 a week. Just get off of zero. That's all we've ever said. You do not want to have zero Bitcoin when all of this comes to a head that we've talked about, because we're approaching, a very interesting time that we haven't even seen yet. We're going to see things explode in a very interesting way. It's going to be rough out there, and you're going to want to have that sovereignty built up already. You're not going to want to have to come back and listen to these podcasts years later when things are already destroyed. Hyperinflation's going crazy. All the sicknesses are even worse, and you're sick yourself or desperate in one of these forms. It's all about education now.
it really is. It's the Great American Health Initiative being led by the Great American Rancher that's being stewarded by these pioneers of Bitcoin and beef. Think about it. Just put all that together. They can meditate on what I just said. That's all you need to do. It's so simple, it's complicated to most. But we've got the proof of work. We really do. And we don't take good care of our children. It's a fiat mindset. It's a centralized, rent-seeking mindset. We've turned our children over to a public school system that now is indoctrinating them and grooming them for a shitty life. We're not basically providing them the right food. You look at me, I'm in my 50s, okay? I come from a very cool, basically eating beef as a baby. You think about that. I don't take antibiotics, folks. I never have. I've broken over 20 bones. I got 14 pieces of metal in me. I'm in my 50s, and I guarantee a lot of people in my 50s, and I'm not being braggadocious. I just had somebody I grew up with the other day. He's dead. I've had so many people that are dead now that I grew up with. This nation's health is under attack, and some people are too far gone. I'll be very honest with you. Some people will never be able to turn back that, but we can't allow that to happen to our basically agriculture, our ranchers, and our children, and our senior citizens. My father just turned 83. And the thing about it is, we do not reflect upon our seniors. We do not give them enough respect for basically pioneering something that was stolen from us. It got stolen on our watch. So it's time to reverse that, to invert it. And whatever you can do as an individual, if it's $5 a week that you're stacking and telling somebody about it, or you're going to divorce the supermarket because you're not going to validate those deceptions anymore, you have a place here. So quit trying to generalize in this big scale, man. It's not that. We're quit losing this world view when it comes to money and food. It's basically through relationship management, relationship building within your community yourself. You are your first community, folks, and nobody's going to save you. So quit looking for somebody out there that's going to regulate you some freedom, because it ain't going to be happening. It's like saying, enslave me harder, please. So, understand the system that you're working in, vertically integrate into your own solution, and do it through relationship management with sound money and sound food and sound communications. That way we'll give a sound future for the generation, and we'll give some sound respect for the ancestors that got us here. So simple, it's complicated, man. It's beef and Bitcoin all the way, man. That's what's going to save this world. Nothing else, man. Number go up, possibly, but that's not how it's going to get there, man. It's going to come through an integration of action, not freaking theorizing and Socratic thinking that goes nowhere except for a circle jerk of an echo chamber. And I'm the first person who's going to start saying this. I've been pretty quiet over the last 4 years, but I ain't going to muzzle myself anymore in the cattle industry nor in the Bitcoin space. Until you can step up on, everything that we've done and speak to it, don't be judging us, because this is a hard fight. And it's done something that's not through our keyboards. It's going out there and putting your boots on the ground and changing your thought patterns and how you basically live your life. And we're going to hold people accountable because we've got proof of work. What do you got? And so I say that to cattle ranchers too, because all of a sudden, all these cattle ranchers that kind of make fun of me and mock me because they're in the commercial commodity system, well, they're kind of getting nervous around the edges, and they're starting, hey, what's this Bitcoin? What's this Bitcoin all about? Because I'm going to tell it right here, and everybody call me out. If I get it wrong, I'll be the first to admit this cattle industry is going to collapse within the next 12 months. And there's going to be a lot of people that are out there right now that ain't ever coming back. What are you going to do as a cattle rancher or as a Bitcoiner saying, I had the warning, but I didn't do anything about it? Because this is how they're going to centralize and consolidate our food system. And if we don't take action right now, man, and if we do not take personal ownership, bring some integrity, some transparency, and some true proof of work, then we're in trouble when it comes to our food system and our money system. We already know the money's broke. So this is how we get our money system fixed, is recreating our food system to what it once was. Now we got new technology that we can do that, and it's called Bitcoin.
Texas Slim, I cannot imagine a better way to finish off this episode than that right there. Nor can I think of a better way to break my record for longest episode so far. We just crossed it. Let's go.
Yeehaw, man. Let's giddy up, man. Saddle up and get your asses to freaking Nashville, man. That's all I can say. Let's get busy, man. And let's build that global mapping system. I want to do a cattleman's feast every continent from here on out over the next 24 months. Let's get that done, because we can do it through the Bitcoin and the beef space. I mean, serious, we're ready. So let's get busy, guys. This is a shot across the bow. So yeehaw for that being the longest freaking episode. Let's get busy. Thank you
I
for
love
that,
it.
Ben.
And something we talked about before recording too is just, this whole new topic of Latin America and these other countries, as
Yes,
you mentioned, because we've focused mainly on the US today, but I mean this is going to be global. We're going big here. We are not the type of
we
people
are.
to keep this just only local. We're going to spread it out far and wide.
Well, let's give a shout out to Owen and Kiki down there in El Salvador. What are they doing? They're integrating a little beef system down there in that beautiful country of El Salvador right now. Beef Back Better. Let's go. Let's get everybody working together. What do they need? They need some help down there in El Salvador. Reach out to them. Say, hey, man, what can we do for you? What can we do without asking for money, without asking for sats? Go out there and shake Kiki and Owen's hand and saying, hey, we need to vertically integrate this beef system. We've got enough cattle. We've got enough integration. We've got enough technology. We are the vertical integration. We have proof of work from soil all the way to the fork. We can make this happen all across this world. And we can start in places like El Salvador, let's say Colombia. I don't know. What do you think there, Ben?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I can say that from all the countries I have traveled to in the last couple of years, which has been quite a few,
Yeah.
they can all use some of this love that you're spreading, and
Yeah.
these this networking, the Bitcoin integration, and just the reversion back to what actually works through
Yes.
decentralization, making humans and food and money all work together again.
100%. I mean, you look what we're doing in Asia. Look what me and Sid are doing in freaking Thailand, man. I'm gonna have a herd of cattle in northern Thailand. Go to what is it? Rideofpassage.live, I believe, LIVE. You can go to Captain Sid's page. I think it's rideofpassage.live. I'm sorry, Sid. Or it's rideofpassage.com. I can't remember. But Ride of Passage, and you
I'll
can see.
find it and put it in the show notes to make sure people can
Yeah,
find.
I mean, that was a bunch of Bitcoiners that got together. There was 8 of us total. They all paid in Bitcoin, and we went and rode northern Thailand all the way up to the Golden Triangle. I mean, there's cattle country all across this world, and we're going to basically 10x the population of regenerative cattle, and we're going to do it through the gates of the beef initiative with this collaboration, like what Captain Sid and other Bitcoiners proved during the rite of passage. So there's an entry point. So, maybe this is the first one for, somebody listening to this podcast. So I appreciate the time and the recording and all of the, man, the Beef Initiative would not be here if it was not for people like you, Ben. So I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Appreciate you too, man. We gave a lot of links out there for people to explore, which is perfect. There's no way anyone's going to listen to this and be like, "Huh, what am I supposed to do next?" We
Right.
gave about 100 things.
Come on, guys, man. Put in 100 hours in the beef initiative, your life will be forever changed. Take a week
Yeah,
off of work. Quit your job. I'm telling people, quit your job and become a beef master for the beef initiative, man. I'll put your ass to work and we'll get you up and running in no time. Seriously, that's where we are with the beef initiative. We can do this.
amazing. Where can people go find you, Texas Slim, and where should people go first thing to learn more? I mean, I'm going to say
This is
beefinitiative.com is probably one.
Nah, this is the fun part. This is what we've been saving. We talked about beef.com being owned by PETA. Well, I'm going to tell you something else. We had this advertisement that was done because the beef checkoff, and it was beef. It's what's for dinner, right? Screw that, man. Beef. It's what's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? Welcome.
Amen.
Welcome to beef.com. That's where you can go. Just go to welcome to beef.com and you're going to basically create a rabbit hole that you're never going to leave. Welcome to beef.com. It's as simple as that.
Fantastic, sir. It has been such an absolute pleasure talking with you today. I'm super excited to get this one out and share with the world. And I'm going to be sharing it with people from all over the spectrum. This
Please
is why
do.
we do what we do. We help the Bitcoiners learn a little bit about beef. We help the carnivores learn more about Bitcoin, acting as a bridge between those two, because we know that once these two forces come together, it's game over for the bad
It
guys.
really
I mean,
is. It
you can't beat
really
it.
is, man. You can't beat it. We've proven it. We've got the vertical integration. Everybody theorizing, we got the theory taken care of, folks. We've sold millions of dollars worth of beef through the gates of the beef initiative, and it's done in a decentralized, vertically integrated system. So, don't fight it. Don't fight so hard not to be a part of it. But a call to action for everybody listening right now, share this, talk about it, spread it out, do what you can to get the word out, because that's where we are. It's a decentralized, basically, bullhorn that we've created here. And somebody that I want to give a lot of respect to is Adam Curry, decentralizing podcasting in the way that he has, podcasting 2.0. He's done a tremendous job of helping out the Beef Initiative, his no agenda. So, this is how it's done. So everybody out there, just, your call to action is to spread this message and we'll get there. But once again, cattleman'sfeast.com, Nashville, go get your tickets, man. Cattleman'sfeast.com, get your tickets. I'll give you even 10%. You can get your tickets through Crowd Health like Ben did, or you can go cattleman'sfeast.com and 10% discount code is clean beef. That's as easy as it gets, man. Go get your tickets now.
I'll
Thanks,
see
Ben.
you all there. Come find us. We're
All
gonna be
right,
there.
guys.
We're gonna be munching on beef. It's gonna be great. I'll talk to you later, man. We're gonna do another episode in the future for sure.
Yes, we will. Giddy up, folks.